Chapter 721. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. Gu Jiao didn't underestimate her enemy. She used almost all her strength to kick him. Han Yi grew up in the military camp and had been to many battlefields, but he had never seen such a decisive and ruthless person. That murderous aura made him, the Han family's legitimate son, shudder. However, Han Yi was not an ordinary master. He quickly reacted. He grabbed the spear in his hand and held it tightly with both hands, blocking Gu Jiao's foot. With a crack, his left arm was dislocated. Unexpectedly, such great strength. Even if he didn't have time to use enough internal force, this boy was definitely the first person who could dislocate his arm on the spot. Han Yi used the strength of his right arm to push the spear, causing Gu Jiao to retreat a few steps. He himself flipped over like a carp. He inserted the spear into the ground and raised his hand to connect his dislocated arm. This kind of injury may require rest for a normal person, but he could forget the pain and quickly enter the next battle. Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes slightly. He was indeed the #1 young master in Xingdu. The first time she put a sack on him, he was careless and underestimated her. Plus, she used a lot of tricks to help him succeed. It didn't mean that his strength was weak. The second time they fought was at home in Willow Lane. At that time, he didn't even use half of his strength. Halfway through, the Black Wind King appeared and the two sides stopped fighting. Today was the day that they would truly fight one-on-one. Han Yi was much stronger than any of the men of sacrifice and the genie guards she met in the Yin Kingdom. But now, she was facing more dangers than just Han Yi. Just in the direction where Han Yi was riding his horse, two other masters arrived in time. Han Yi pointed his spear at the tree where Xiaoheng was and ordered, "Kill that man too." That man. This meant that Han Yi had no idea that Xiaoheng was behind the tree. He simply wanted to silence him. In fact, Gu Jiao had some doubts in her heart. The Han family had just met with an accident, and before the second Master Han's bones were cold, Han Yi had assassinated the doctor that the monarch had found for the former crown princess. Was Han Yi really not afraid of death? Or was it that Han Yi had absolute confidence that he could silence them without leaving any traces behind? Han Yi was not Han Che. He would not ignore the consequences. He was meticulous and powerful. Gu Jiao believed that he had the confidence to kill her. But more than that, Gu Jiao guessed that Han Yi had no way out. Or rather, the crown prince had no way out. The former crown princess's injury was strange. They couldn't let the crown princess wake up. Was it because once the crown princess woke up, they would be able to identify the murderer? If that was the case, then Han Ye's actions today could be justified. Two experts rushed toward Xiaoheng. Gu Jiao threw out two blackfire pearls. Dodge! Han Yi shouted. The experts dodged perfectly. It seemed that Han Yi had come prepared. He was very clear about her methods. One Han Yi was already very difficult to deal with. Now there were two more. She was a bit overwhelmed. The two experts continued to rush toward Xiaoheng. Gu Jiao went forward to block them. Han Yi stabbed with his spear. Gu Jiao tapped the ground with the tip of her foot. She took a few steps on the tree, turned in the air and somersaulted. She landed on one knee on the other side of Han Yi. She shot out two Tang Hua needles from her fingertips. The two experts thought that they were blackfire pearls and hurriedly dodged again. Gu Jiao came in front of Xiaoheng. She took down the small basket and handed it to Xiaoheng. Her eyes were like torches as she looked around. "You go first. Bring the medicine box to the state preceptor." "Can he open it?" Xiaoheng asked. Xiaoheng knew a little about the secret of the medicine box. For example, other than Gu Jiao, ordinary people couldn't open it. Gu Jiao said, "If you can't open it, you can try. Didn't you knock it open once?" That was a long time ago. When they were still in the countryside of Zhao country, Gu Jiao was whipped by Marquis Gu. He went to apply medicine for Gu Jiao and accidentally knocked over the medicine box. It was at that time that he found that the medicine box was very portable. He didn't mention it to Gu Jiao. He just mentioned it not long ago. "Did you not close the lid properly?" Xiaoheng asked. "I closed it properly," Gu Jiao said. If you can't open it, you can kick it with your feet. Xiaoheng. The medicine box. Xiaoheng had disguised himself. Naturally, Han Yi didn't recognize him. But how could he leave him alive? Han Yi sneered, he can't leave. You should give up. Gu Jiao pressed down on the dagger at her waist. She didn't expect to fight when she went out, so she didn't bring a weapon. She could only use this for now. A dagger really didn't have an advantage against a long spear. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, there was the sound of something breaking through the air from the forest behind her. Catch! Gu Jiao grabbed it with her hand. A long spear fell into her hand. Gu Qingfeng used his qinggong to descend from the sky. Without waiting for him to land, Gu Jiao promptly said to him, "Take him away." Gu Qingfeng nodded solemnly. He turned around and grabbed Xiaoheng's arm. Taking Xiaoheng with him, he jumped over the heads of the two masters. One of the masters flew up and wanted to grab Gu Jiao, but he was shot down by Gu Jiao. Gu Qingfeng wanted to be the one who stayed, but he knew that this was the most suitable arrangement. Chase! Han Yi said to the two masters. The injured master clutched his chest and chased after Gu Qingfeng and Xiaoheng with his companion. Han Yi looked at the four people, then looked at Gu Jiao and snorted. I don't care who you are. And I don't care how many masters you have gathered around you. Today, none of you will leave this forest alive. Is that so? Gu Jiao gripped the long spear in her hand. Her eyes flashed and she took up her stance. Very good. Let me experience your spear skills. Han Yi smiled coldly. Or I'll give you another chance. Who taught you your spear skills? Beautiful monk, but that's none of your business. You don't deserve to know. You people from the Han family don't deserve to know. Gu Jiao stabbed out with her spear. Han Yi felt an incomparably cold murderous aura. This clearly wasn't a regular spear, but why did it emit a boundless spear intent in this brat's hand? That's right, this was the silver spear that Gu Qingfeng used in operas. It was lighter than a regular spear, and much lighter than Gu Jiao's red tasseled spear. Even so, Han Ye's arm was still slightly numb when he blocked the spear. This brat. What terrifying strength. I must kill him today, or else he will become a great threat to the Han family in the future. Han Yi didn't waste any more time, nor did he show any mercy. I brought my spear here to experience your spear skills, but I probably didn't tell you that I'm best at swordsmanship. After he finished speaking, he stabbed the spear in his hand into the ground, and pulled out the treasured sword on his saddle. The light of the sword flashed past Gu Jiao's eyes. In a flash, the assassination attempt on Xiaoheng flashed through Gu Jiao's mind. At that time, the assassin used a long sword. A guess appeared in her mind. That night, the person was you. Second Master Han was just a scapegoat. The real murderer was Han Yi. Han Yi was stunned for a moment before he realized that Gu Jiao was probably referring to the assassination attempt on Xiao Lulang in the middle of the night 2 days ago. Han Yi didn't deny it, only saying, "You and Xiao Lulang are indeed related. That's all the more reason to kill you." He couldn't let the crown princess get such a powerful master. The two sides started to compete again. Rumors liked to exaggerate. If a person only had 1% of strength, they would often be praised as 90%. However, Han Yi was different. He had 10% of strength, but the world only knew 30% of it. Gu Jiao had only recovered 40% of her strength from her previous life, so she wasn't Han Ye's opponent. Gu Jiao's body was gradually covered with wounds. She used her spear to support her gradually weakened body, and raised her hand to wipe the blood from the corner of her mouth. The number one master of the younger generation in Chengdu was indeed worthy of her reputation. Han Yi looked at Gu Jiao proudly. What other skills do you have? Show me all of them. I have a lot of skills. I'm just afraid that you won't be able to live until the end. Shameless boasting. Die. Han Yi swung his sword at Gu Jiao to stab her. Gu Jiao's spear touched the ground, and she jumped up. Her toes hooked on a tree branch above her head, and she used the momentum to fly above Han Ye's head. Then, like a dragon soaring into the sea, she chopped down with her spear. Han Yi cut her spear in half with one move. Her body continued to fall, and Han Ye's sword went straight for her heart. She didn't dodge. In a situation where there was a great disparity in strength, she could only hurt herself to kill the enemy. Her previous attack was all a feint. She actually wanted to use her body to catch Han Ye's sword. When the sword entered his body, the distance between them shortened, and the dagger hidden in her left hand could cut his throat. Han Ye realized what Gu Jiao wanted to do, and his eyebrows jumped. Madman! This youth from Zhao country was a madman. In order to kill him, he didn't even want his own life. Gu Jiao only had this one chance, but Han Ye didn't. His realm was higher than Gu Jiao's, so he didn't need to take this risk. He planned to stop. Gu Jiao reached out her hand, wanting to grab his sword with her bare hands. This boy wanted to cut off his hand. Han Ye's heart flashed with a chill. This boy's tenacity was really amazing. He had seen ruthless people, but he had never seen someone this ruthless. His sword could cut iron like mud. He dared to guarantee that all 4 of his fingers would be cut off. Just as Gu Jiao was about to die together with Han Ye, a strong sword energy came from the forest, fiercely shaking Han Ye's sword away from Gu Jiao's hand. Gu Jiao grabbed empty air. She fell down, but she didn't fall on Han Ye's body, and she didn't fall on the messy grass. She fell into a familiar embrace. Oh. She raised her eyes and dazedly looked at the young handsome face that suddenly appeared in front of her. The little Ahog on the top of her head stood up. He carried her in a princess carry and lightly landed on the ground, gently placing her under a large tree. He took off his cloak and placed it on the ground, letting her sit on his cloak. His cloak was clean and carried a refreshing fragrance. On the other hand, she had already been covered in dust from the fight. Her little face was dirty, and she looked like a stray cat. She looked at him with a confused expression. Why are you here? He didn't rush to answer, but raised his hand to pick the grass and fallen leaves from her hair. He looked at her with a gentle gaze and gently rubbed her head, saying, "Wait for me here." After saying this, he acted like a parent worried that his child wouldn't be able to sit still. He took off the brocade pouch from his waist and handed it to Gu Jiao. "There's food inside." Gu Jiao. Han Ye was badly shaken by the sword aura just now. Half of his arm was numb, and it took him a while to regain his senses. He looked warily at the young man who appeared out of nowhere, his gaze cold as he said, "Who are you? What sect do you belong to?" The man stood up and turned to look at Han Ye. The gentleness and doting in his eyes disappeared, and in its place was a murderous aura. He stood with his sword and said word by word in the language of the Yan Kingdom. Underground Martial Arts Arena, Gu Chongqing. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhpqg.com/89642_8964286/1070084333. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhpqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 722. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are available here. Underground Martial Arts Arena, the secret organization that specializes in collecting masters from various countries? Han Ye had seen the masters there before. Many of his sparring partners came from there, but most of those masters were not his opponents at all. This person looked younger than him. Han Ye did not believe that there was someone of the same age who could beat him in martial arts. Han Ye thought for a moment and said coldly, "Are you also the reinforcements invited by the dethroned crown princess?" "Ha, I really underestimated her. In these years of imprisonment in the imperial mausoleum, she really did have a lot of secret plans. Were you also the one who assassinated the brocade guard in the crown prince's residence?" Assassinate the brocade guard in the crown prince's residence? Gu Chongqing glanced behind him, and a trace of danger flashed in his eyes. Gu Jiao blinked and pointed at her fingers. "If I don't admit it, it's not me." Gu Chongqing had been in the Yan Kingdom for a long time, and could speak Yan Kingdom's language fluently. However, he did not have the talent for languages and could still hear some slight differences in the accent. Which country are you from? Han Yi asked. Han Yi wanted to recruit masters for his own use. He did not know that Gu Changqing was Gu Jiao's elder brother. He only thought that they were allies who worked for the dethroned crown princess. This kind of relationship was often the easiest to break. Gu Changqing was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He hurt his sister like this. He wanted to cut him back sword by sword and knife by knife. Gu Changqing did what he thought. Where Gu Jiao was hurt, Gu Changqing made Han Yi suffer 3 times the injury. After dozens of moves, each of his moves saw blood. Han Yi was being suppressed very badly. He was being beaten up by Gu Changqing. Gu Jiao opened Gu Changqing's silk pouch. There was a packet of dried meat, Gu Jiao's favorite, a small packet of crab cakes, Gu Jiao's favorite, and a small box of dried plums, Gu Jiao's favorite. Gu Jiao took out the dried meat and ate it while watching the duel. She could clearly see that Gu Changqing's martial arts had greatly improved compared to when he was in Zhao country. It seemed that he had been dueling a lot in the underground martial arts arena these days. There was no such thing as a free lunch in this world. All the rewards must have been obtained after going through untold hardships and difficulties. You're not qualified to bully my sister, Gu Changqing said coldly and kicked Han Yi in the chest, sending him flying. Han Yi didn't understand the words spoken in the language of the state of Zhao. He only felt that this person's martial arts were unbelievably strong. Ever since he was young, he had never met a worthy opponent among his peers. The young man in front of him was the first. As if reading Han Yi's thoughts, Gu Changqing said coldly, "You're wrong. You're the second. If it wasn't for my sister's strength being suppressed by the protective talisman, you little brat would have been a pile of mud." Han Yi wanted to retreat, but Gu Changqing didn't give him a chance to retreat. He cut his back with a sword. He fell forward and rolled a few times on the ground. He only managed to stabilize himself when he hit a tree stump. His blood flowed all over the ground. Gu Jiao gnawed on a piece of dried meat. Oh, it was good to eat. The difference in strength between Gu Changqing and Han Yi wasn't so big that Han Yi would be defeated like this. The reason why Han Yi was being beaten was because he had hurt Gu Jiao and touched Gu Changqing's reverse scale. When people were angry, they could always stimulate their potential and battle strength. Han Yi was lying on the ground with serious injuries. He tried to grab his sword, but Gu Changqing flicked it away. Gu Changqing raised his sword and chopped down at Han Yi's head. Han Yi closed his eyes. At this critical moment, 3 hidden weapons were shot from the side with a whooshing sound. Gu Jiao's eyebrows twitched. She waved her hand and shot out Tanghua needles. 2 of the hidden weapons were blocked. The other one was blocked by Gu Changqing's sword. The moment Gu Changqing blocked the hidden weapon, a man in silver robes used his qinggong to pick up Han Yi from the ground and take him away. Gu Changqing looked at Gu Jiao under the tree and resisted the urge to chase after them. But it was impossible for him to let Han Yi go so easily. He slashed out a ray of sword energy in the air. The other party didn't expect him to have this move, and didn't have time to take Han Yi away. Ah! With a scream, Han Yi's hamstring was cut off by the sword energy. "It's Qi Xian," Gu Jiao said. "Qi Xian of the Tang sect." Gu Changqing frowned. "That's him." Gu Jiao nodded. Gu Changqing said, "I've heard of this person in the underground martial arts arena." Qi Xian also came to Chengdu of the Yan Kingdom through the underground martial arts arena. He was ranked 7th on the expert list of the underground martial arts arena of the Yan Kingdom. Gu Changqing was now ranked 11th. But it took Qi Xian 2 years to reach 7th place. Gu Changqing had only been here for 2 months. In these 2 months, Gu Changqing had been fighting almost day and night, just to get to Chengdu as soon as possible. Gu Changqing put away his long sword and came to Gu Jiao. He knelt down on one knee and asked her, "Does it hurt?" "What? Oh, it's hurt." "It doesn't hurt." Gu Jiao shook her head lightly. Gu Jiao's injuries were mainly on her arms and front shoulders. It could be seen how hard she fought with Han Yi. Gu Changqing didn't have any medicine on him. "I'll take you to the clinic," Gu Changqing said. He put Gu Jiao on his back. Gu Jiao said, "I can walk." Gu Changqing didn't want to put her down. "You sprained your ankle." "Did I?" Gu Jiao lay on Gu Changqing's back and silently turned her right foot. The other one, Gu Changqing said without looking back. Gu Jiao turned her left foot again. It seemed that she really sprained it. She couldn't turn it anymore. Her ankle should be swollen. She didn't even notice it. Gu Changqing knew it was like this. She never cared about her own safety, as if getting hurt was a common thing. But if the person she cared about lost a hair, she would let the murderer peel off a layer of skin. The carriage was already broken, and the horse was frightened and ran away. There was only a fainted coachman lying on the ground. When Gu Changqing walked towards him, he woke up in a daze. Whose coachman? Gu Changqing asked Gu Jiao. Mine, Gu Jiao said. She switched back to her teenage voice. Gu Changqing's murderous aura faded and he said to the coachman, "Follow me." The coachman didn't understand what had happened. But when he saw the tragic scene of a fight, he shrank his neck and quickly followed Gu Changqing. The coachman was from the Yin kingdom. The brother and sister spoke the language of the Zhao kingdom, so they didn't have to avoid him. Gu Changqing's figure was tall. Gu Jiao was lying on his back. She was small. The little ahog on top of her head swayed in the breeze. Gu Changqing looked at the shadow on the ground and couldn't help laughing. How did you know I was here? Gu Jiao asked. With the coachman here, she spoke in her teenage voice. It was obviously more realistic than when she was fighting at the border. Gu Changqing said softly, "I don't know. I was passing by and saw two horses rush out, so I came to take a look." His words were half true. In the Zhao kingdom he was a subject. He ate the monarch's salary and carried the monarch's worries. It was his duty to punish evil. But this was not the Zhao kingdom. He came to the Yin kingdom to find a way to treat Gu Jiao's loss of control. Everything else had nothing to do with him. But for some reason he still came here. It was as if there was an invisible force in the dark. Did you suffer a lot of injuries? Gu Jiao saw the inch-long scar on the back of Gu Changqing's neck. It was obvious that it was newly healed. There must be more on his body. No, I'm not injured. Gu Changqing didn't know that she saw it and denied it. Gu Jiao didn't ask again. But why did you come to the Yin kingdom? Gu Changqing asked. When Gu Changqing left the Zhao kingdom, Gu Yan was still alive. Gu Jiao didn't reveal any plans to go to the Yin kingdom. Gu Jiao told him that Gu Yan was injured by Nan Gongli. A yen must have an operation in half a year. I heard that the Yin kingdom may have an operation room that I want. I wanted to go with you, but you're already on your way. Gu Yan's situation at that time was not suitable for him to travel. Fortunately, he had the admission papers sent by his master in Little Jing Kong. Gu Changqing didn't expect so many things to happen in the capital after he left. He was not a person who would regret, but at this moment, he couldn't help but think that if he left a few days later, would he be able to come to the Yin kingdom with them? But on second thought, it might be a good thing that he didn't come with them. It was better not to let his younger siblings see his dark days in the underground martial arts arena. How's Ayan? He asked. The operation was very successful, Gu Jiao said. Gu Changqing was slightly stunned. The operation has been done? Gu Jiao nodded. Yes, I did the operation myself. Gu Changqing was relieved. He couldn't help but ask, will it relapse in the future? Gu Jiao said seriously, recover well. The probability of relapse is not high. Gu Changqing's lips slightly curved into a gentle arc. Jiao Jiao is really amazing. Gu Jiao seriously agreed. Yes, I think I'm amazing too. Gu Changqing laughed out loud. He carried Gu Jiao to the side of a wild lotus pond. He bent down and plucked a large lotus leaf. He handed it to the coachman beside him and said in the language of the Yin kingdom, "Beat my brother well." He almost called her sister. The coachman suddenly understood. So they were brothers. No, you spoil your brother so much. Do you have to? Let him down. Let him hold the umbrella himself. You can't spoil him. The coachman obediently held the lotus leaf umbrella for Gu Jiao. The top of his head suddenly became cool. Gu Jiao breathed a sigh of relief. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896442_score8964286/1070076885. HTML genius remembered the website address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile version reading website. Chapter 723. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated more quickly. Millions of novels can be read for free. There are all kinds of novels that can't be found online here. With Gu Qingfeng's lightness skill, it was not a problem for him to get rid of the two masters of Han Yi. At this moment, Gu Qingfeng and Xiao Heng should have already met up with the people of the State Preceptor Hall with the small medicine box. Gu Chongqing continued to carry Gu Jiao forward. My carriage is just ahead. After passing through this forest, we will arrive. There are also a few people from the martial arts arena accompanying me. He explained the situation to Gu Jiao in advance, so that they would not find strangers there when they arrived. If Gu Jiao did not want to see the people from the martial arts arena, he would let her wait nearby while he drove the carriage over. Okay. Gu Jiao did not mind. Thinking of something, Gu Chongqing asked, by the way, the two people just now, one is Qi Xian, who is the other? Gu Jiao said, the heir of the Han family, Han Yi. Gu Chongqing muttered, the crown prince's mother's family? Gu Jiao grunted, hugged his neck, and looked at him curiously. You know about this? Gu Chongqing tilted his head slightly at her, with a bit of intimacy, and said in a lighter tone, I asked about some news of Sheng Du at the martial arts arena. After a pause he asked, why did he want to kill you? Gu Jiao said, the former crown princess was injured. The monarch asked me to save the former crown princess, but he did not want me to go. In addition, I have some other grievances with the Han family. Gu Chongqing frowned. Other grievances? It's a long story. Gu Jiao was a person who could use her hands but not her mouth, so her words were very concise and comprehensive, and every sentence hit the nail on the head. Gu Chongqing was silent after hearing this. He never expected that Gu Qingfeng would also come, and in such a way. Even when he was fighting at the border, he had already noticed the growth of his second brother, but he had never thought that it would be such a great growth. Actually, he didn't need Gu Qingfeng to be so tenacious. It wasn't just him. In fact, his grandfather didn't put too much pressure on Gu Qingfeng either. As for his second son, it was enough for him to be a carefree and happy young master of an aristocratic family for the rest of his life. In a situation where there was no external force to force him, he carried the burden on his own shoulders. They were all constantly growing in order to protect the people they cared about. There were too many shocking things. Other than Gu Qingfeng's experience as a slave in the Han family, there were also the grudges between Gu Jiao and Han Che and Han Shizhi, as well as the entanglement between Xiao Heng and the Yan royal family. It looked like this trip to Great Yin was not going to be a peaceful one. While the siblings were talking, the carriage was already in front of them. There were a total of 3 carriages. The last carriage was the most ordinary one used to transport luggage. The middle carriage, the most spacious one, belonged to Gu Chongqing. The leading carriage, which was ordinary, belonged to the manager of the underground martial arts arena, Peng Hai. He was the one who recommended Gu Chongqing to Sheng City. The fact that Gu Chongqing could bring Gu Jiao to see him proved that this person was trustworthy. Peng Hai was a man in his 30s, but he looked like he was in his 40s due to his anxious appearance. From afar, he saw Gu Chongqing carrying a person on his back and bringing another person with him, walking towards them with steady steps. Peng Hai suspected that his eyes were playing tricks on him. This king of hell went into the forest and actually brought 2 people back? And he even carried one of them on his back. Anyone who dared to come within 3 feet of the king of hell would be beaten up like a dog. Otherwise, how did the title of king of hell come about? And because the coachman wanted to hold the lotus leaf umbrella for Gu Jiao, he would bump into Gu Chongqing from time to time, but Gu Chongqing didn't show any anger in his eyes. Peng Hai's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Peng Hai got off the carriage and walked towards Gu Chongqing, asking, Changqing, what's going on? Gu Changqing calmly explained. Someone was robbed in the forest. After asking, I found out that she was a fellow villager from Zhao country. She was injured. Coachman. And now she's not a younger brother? The coachman was a nobody, so he naturally wouldn't care about the private affairs of these nobles. Working in Sheng City, one should mind their own business. Gu Changqing carefully weighed the information he got from Gu Jiao before deciding to temporarily hide his relationship with Gu Jiao and the others. Peng Hai. Like hell I'll believe you. Your aura is different. Gu Changqing didn't care whether Peng Hai believed him or not. Even if he didn't believe him, Peng Hai had no evidence. He came to Sheng City with Peng Hai, and Peng Hai was his guarantor. If something happened to him, Peng Hai would be implicated. So it could be said that he and Peng Hai were in the same boat. Peng Hai smiled and said to Gu Jiao, My surname is Peng, and my first name is Hai. I see that you're quite young, so you can call me Brother Hai, or Big C. Gu Jiao thought for a moment. Fatty Big C? How could someone have such a strange name? Peng Hai was speechless. Can I trouble you to lend me some medicine? Gu Changqing said to Peng Hai. He paused and said, I want to send my fellow villager back. Can I trouble you to send this coachman back? I'll meet you at the inn later. Do you know which inn? Peng Hai asked. The Floating Cloud Inn, Gu Changqing said. Seeing that he remembered correctly, Peng Hai turned around and went to his carriage to get the medicine. He took the bottle with the best effect. By the time he came to deliver the medicine to Gu Changqing had already carried Gu Jiao into the carriage. Gu Jiao's left ankle was swollen badly. Even her instep was swollen, and her shoe was about to burst open. Gu Changqing sat down beside Gu Jiao, picked up her foot, and gently placed it on his lap. Let me take a look. Bear with it. When Peng Hai came to deliver the medicine to Gu Changqing, he caught a glimpse of Gu Changqing taking off her shoe and holding her white, tender, chubby foot with his broad palm. Peng Hai was stunned. Was it that shocking? Yi. Don't tell me you're interested in her. No wonder you're not interested in women. It turns out you're interested in men. Moreover, she's so much smaller than me. Do you have any shame? Do you have any shame? No wonder Peng Hai misunderstood. Gu Changqing was too difficult to get along with. Once, the most famous courtesan took the initiative to throw herself into his arms, but he thought she was an assassin and knocked her down. That courtesan had broken 3 of her ribs and was still lying on the bed. Public morals were deteriorating day by day. Peng Hai handed the medicine through the window and put it on the table. Then he left without looking back. Imperial Palace, Zhaoyang Hall. Shang Guanyan's breath was gradually weakening. The imperial preceptor gave her a life-prolonging pill, but it didn't have much effect. The emperor didn't go to the morning court. He wandered around the room, looking at the door from time to time. His eyes were cold and ruthless. He was a tyrant, a madman. No one knew what terrible things he would do in anger. All the palace servants were silent. He impatiently shouted, Still not coming? Is the disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall dead? The Imperial Preceptor Hall had an outstanding status. The Emperor of Great Yin rarely used such heavy words to reprimand the Imperial Preceptor Hall. Zhang Dequan hurriedly trotted out and said to the eunuch at the door, Go and see if the disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall has come back. The Emperor looked at the Imperial Preceptor and angrily said, I already said to let Wang Su bring people to kidnap him. You said to let the disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall invite him here. The Imperial Preceptor said, I'm afraid Wang Su can't kidnap that kid. Humph. The Emperor coldly flicked his sleeve. He's coming. He's coming. Zhang Dequan suddenly rushed into the room and said excitedly, The disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall brought him here. The Emperor frowned and said, Quickly let them in. Yes. Zhang Dequan shouted outside. Hurry up, all of you hurry up. They were in a hurry. The disciple of the Imperial Preceptor Hall, and Xiao Heng almost rushed to Zhaoyang Hall at full speed. Although Gu Jiao had entered the palace, she did not have an audience with the emperor. Therefore the emperor did not know Xiao Lulang. His gaze fell on the ordinary-looking young man and said, You are Xiao Lulang? Xiao Heng looked at the screen in front of the bed and said, I am Xiao Lulang's medicine boy. We were chased on the way and she was stopped by the assassins. This is her medicine box." As he spoke, he took down the small basket on his back and handed it to Zhang Dequan, who was beside him. He knew to hand it to the eunuch in charge. This was not a rule that an ordinary medicine boy could understand. However, at this critical juncture, no one would care about this small detail. The emperor wanted to invite a doctor for the former crown princess. In the end, the doctor was assassinated on the way here. No one would believe that this was a coincidence. The emperor was furious. "Call Wang Su here," Zhang Dequan hurriedly said. "Yes." The imperial preceptor hall gave Xiaoheng a deep look. Xiaoheng also glanced at the imperial preceptor hall. This person was very similar to the imperial preceptor that Gu Jiao had described. He appeared beside the emperor without any flattery or fear. He should be the imperial preceptor hall. The imperial preceptor hall knew that Gu Jiao did not have a medicine boy by her side. Otherwise, she would have brought him along when she went to perform the surgery on Gu Yan last time. Of course, he could also say that he was new. He just did not know if the imperial preceptor hall would believe him. "Give me the medicine box," the imperial preceptor hall said to Zhang Dequan. Zhang Dequan took out the small medicine box and handed it to the imperial preceptor hall. The imperial preceptor hall picked up the small medicine box and walked behind the screen. Xiaoheng's gaze was fixed on the screen. It was only a few steps away, but he could not cross it. "That medicine boy, come and help," the imperial preceptor hall said lightly. Xiaoheng's eyes moved. He did not care if the emperor agreed or not and walked over. The imperial preceptor hall put the small medicine box on the stool beside the bed and said to Xiaoheng, "Open it. You didn't even try and directly asked me to open it. Are you too lazy to do it yourself? Or do you know that only I can open it in this room?" Xiaoheng's heart flashed with doubts. But to be honest, he was not sure whether he could open it or not. If he couldn't open it, would he really have to kick it in front of the imperial preceptor? Fortunately, Xiaoheng gently touched it, and it automatically popped open. It was very easy to open. The imperial preceptor hall's face did not change at all. He took out hemostatic medicine and several medicines that Xiaoheng had never seen before from the medicine box. Then he began to deal with Sheng Guanyan's injuries. Sheng Guanyan was bruised all over. The minor injuries had been dealt with by the imperial preceptor hall. The next thing to deal with was the serious injury on her waist. Sheng Guanyan's situation was not good. Even with the emergency medicine, she could only be temporarily stabilized. The imperial preceptor hall said, "She needs surgery." The emperor said from behind the screen, "Then give her the surgery." The imperial preceptor hall said, "I can't do this surgery. Only Xiao Lulang can do it. Moreover, she doesn't have much time. If she can't be operated on within half an hour, she will lose the last chance to be treated." Half an hour. Xiaoheng clenched his fingers. The emperor sent Wang Su and the disciples of the imperial preceptor hall to pick up Xiao Lulang. If they didn't bring him back, they would be beheaded. Xiao Lulang was being hunted down. No one could guarantee that he was still alive. Even if he was lucky enough to survive, it would take more than half an hour to get from the imperial palace to the place where the incident happened. Even if the Han family's Black Wind cavalry were used, it would be impossible to bring him back in time. A suffocating atmosphere filled the entire Zhaoyang hall. Sheng Guanyan's life was fading away. Xiaoheng's heart was aching. He suddenly couldn't breathe. Was he worried about Jiao Jiao? Or, the imperial preceptor pinched Sheng Guanyan's wrist. "Not good, her pulse is gone." Xiaoheng's eyes trembled. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Coming! Coming!" Outside the door, Zhang Dequan's excited voice sounded. It was Wang Su who led the people into the palace. As soon as he arrived at the palace gate, he met Gu Jiao, who was coming down from the carriage. "Get out!" Gu Jiao strode into the room. The emperor. "I, Gu Jiao. You also get out." The emperor. The emperor was thrown out. In the room, except for Xiaoheng and the imperial preceptor, everyone was cleared out by Gu Jiao. Xiaoheng waited outside the screen. The scene was a bit bloody. Gu Jiao didn't want him to see it. Gu Jiao opened the small medicine box and disinfected her hands with disinfectant. The imperial preceptor described Sheng Guanyan's situation. Gu Jiao quickly came to a conclusion. There are 2 fractures in the waist with many soft tissue contusions and more potential injuries. This place is not suitable for surgery. Prepare a stretcher. The Imperial Preceptor glanced at her and reminded her. She has no pulse. Gu Jiao raised a pair of gloved hands and came to the bed. Looking at the bloodless Shang Guanyan, she calmly and quickly said, I know, save her first. 1 milligram of epinephrine, ready to inject. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/10698792. HTML Genius memorized this site's address. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 724. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. The novels that can't be found on the internet are all available here. After using 4 bottles of epinephrine, Shang Guanyan's blood pressure and pulse were restored. Blood pressure is normal, pulse is normal. The State Preceptor said. Stretcher. Gu Jiao said. She put away the sphygmomanometer. The State Preceptor went to the door and ordered a disciple of the State Preceptor Hall to take his junior brothers to carry the stretcher. The king frowned and said, Where are we going to carry her? The State Preceptor said, The State Preceptor Hall. She can't be treated here. The king didn't ask why they couldn't treat her. He just frowned and said to Zhang Dequan, You go too. Yes. Zhang Dequan and the disciples of the State Preceptor Hall carried the stretcher, mainly the disciples of the State Preceptor Hall. Xiao Heng looked deeply at Shang Guanyan, who was covered in blood, being carried out on a stretcher. His heart tightened for no reason. This feeling was too strange. Gu Jiao had already taken off her gloves. When she brushed past him, she secretly pinched his fingers. This seemingly inadvertent small action had a silent comfort. Then she went out of the door and said, Medicine boy, keep up. The king's eyes fell on Gu Jiao's young and immature face, and his eyes flashed with suspicion. Obviously, Gu Jiao was too young. It was hard to believe that her medical skills were persuasive. But the king heard the whole process of Gu Jiao's rescue. Indeed, Gu Jiao was the one who took the lead. Her voice was young and inexperienced, but her tone revealed calmness that was inconsistent with her young age. The king said to Gu Jiao in a deep voice, If you can't cure her, bring me your head. Gu Jiao glanced at the king and said, If she's cured, won't you bring me your head to thank me? The king angrily said, You. Zhang Dequan risked his life to stop the king and said, Your Majesty, saving people is more important. Saving people is more important. Boy, you're really bold. You even dared to talk back to the king. And to such an extent that they were left speechless. The State Preceptor nodded slightly at the monarch. We'll leave first. After the operation, I'll immediately send someone to the palace to inform His Majesty of the results. A storm was brewing in the monarch's eyes. Zhang Dequan coughed softly. Hurry. Thank you for your trouble, State Preceptor and young Master Xiao. The State Preceptor, Gu Jiao, and Xiao Heng took Shang Guanyan to the carriage of the State Preceptor Palace. The roads in the Yin Kingdom were well built. There were no bumps along the way. With the disciples of the Imperial Preceptor Hall leading the way, the pedestrians made way for them. They were almost unimpeded. Gu Jiao sighed. This is an ancient ambulance. The carriage stopped outside the Qilin Hall. 2 disciples of the Imperial Preceptor Palace quickly and steadily carried the stretcher down. The group went straight to the empty room guarded by 2 men of sacrifice at the end of the right corridor. Xiao Heng waited in the ward where Gu Yin once stayed. If Shang Guanyan's operation was successful, she would also be sent to this ward to recuperate. They are all trustworthy people. the state preceptor said to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao understood. She stepped into the room, put the small medicine box in the groove on the wall, and entered the operating room with the state preceptor and the 2 disciples of the imperial preceptor palace who were carrying the stretcher. When the 2 saw such a scene, they didn't say a word. They silently carried the patient to the operating table. After placing the patient in the prone position as required, they left under the state preceptor's signal. Gu Jiao looked around and said, "The equipment is different from the last time. Are we entering a different operating room every time?" The state preceptor came to the sink, carefully washed his hands, opened the cabinet door, and took out 2 sets of surgical gowns. There are indeed several operating rooms in this dimension according to the needs of the patient. Why is it the same as the small medicine box? Gu Jiao muttered. The state preceptor lightly said, "Are you curious now? Let's make you think about it last time." Gu Jiao also cleaned up and changed into the surgical gown. She looked around the operating room with advanced equipment and said, "This is the first time I've seen these equipment, but I seem to know how to use them." The state preceptor looked at her meaningfully. So, Gu Jiao thought seriously and suddenly realized, "I'm really a genius." The state preceptor was speechless. The state preceptor saw Gu Jiao take out a box of powder from the cabinet. He asked, "Are you going to use bone cement?" Gu Jiao said, "No, she's still young. She can't use bone cement casually. I'm looking for pedicle screws." Bone cement was a solidified liquid that could be injected into the repair site through puncture. After it hardened, it would become a part of the human bone. However, it was a foreign body after all. Although the short-term effect was good, there might be long-term complications. After a long time, it might require a second infusion. The state preceptor asked, "Haven't you considered conservative treatment?" Gu Jiao opened another cabinet. "Let her lie down for 3 months? With her temper, I'm afraid she can't lie down." "Ah, found it." The state preceptor looked at Shangguan Yan, and then looked at Gu Jiao. He didn't ask how Gu Jiao knew about Shangguan Yan's temperament. But to be honest, considering all of Shangguan Yan's injuries, she was indeed not suitable for conservative treatment. Everything was ready. Gu Jiao and the state preceptor came to the 2 sides of the operating table. Gu Jiao. The patient's condition. The state preceptor. The anesthesia is complete. Her heart rate and blood pressure are normal. Gu Jiao. The operation begins. Xiao Heng stood quietly in the side room and waited. Zhang Dequan also came over. He didn't know if he volunteered or the emperor asked him to come. There were many side rooms here, but he didn't stay in the side room. Instead, he walked back and forth in the corridor. He was worried that he would make too much noise and affect Shangguan Yan's treatment, so he walked very quietly. He tiptoed like a thief. Xiao Heng seemed calmer than him, but his heart was in turmoil. After experiencing life and death, there were few things in the world that could make him feel uneasy. Gu Jiao had successfully escaped from danger. His uneasiness at this moment came from another woman. But it was strange, wasn't it? He tried to calm himself down. Worrying was useless. What he needed to do now was to figure out the whole story and find out the initiator of the incident, as well as the executioners who helped the tyrant. Eunuch Zhang. He stopped Zhang Dequan in the corridor. He remembered that the little eunuch in Zhaoyang Hall called him that. Zhang Dequan stopped and looked at Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng had changed his appearance. At this time he had an ordinary face. Even his phoenix eyes had turned red phoenix eyes. Zhang Dequan didn't recognize him. "You are Xiao Yulong's medicine boy?" Zhang Dequan asked. "Yes," Xiao Heng said. "Ah." Zhang Dequan saw that Xiao Heng obviously had something to say. He looked at the operating room guarded by death soldiers, and silently walked to Xiao Heng's room. "What's the matter?" Xiao Heng was about to speak when a little eunuch in the palace walked over. "Eunuch Zhang, people from the rearguard commandery are here. They want to take Xiao Liulong's medicine boy to the rearguard commandery for interrogation. They were going to investigate the assassination." Xiao Heng was in disguise. He would be exposed after entering the rearguard commandery. There was a high chance that he would be tortured a little if he testified that the Han family's heir was the murderer. Zhang Dequan didn't interfere with the rearguard commandery's arrest. After all, the The rearguard commandery was His Majesty's trusted yamen. At this moment, a disciple of the state preceptor hall came over. It was the eldest disciple of the state preceptor hall, Yi Qing. Yi Qing said to the little eunuch, "This is the state preceptor hall. If there's anything, wait until the state preceptor comes out." The little eunuch opened his mouth. But the rearguard commandery, Yi Qing flicked his long sleeves and said with a strong aura, "The rearguard commandery is not qualified to arrest people in the state preceptor hall." The little eunuch was so scared that he trembled. "Yes. I'll pass on the message now." After the little eunuch left quickly, Yi Qing greeted Zhang Duquan, and then looked at Xiaoheng. His tone and expression were much more polite than before. "You're young Master Zhao's medicine boy, right? My name is Yi Qing, and I'm the eldest disciple of the state preceptor hall. The state preceptor has prepared some medicinal herbs for young Master Xiao. Come with me to get them." Xiaoheng nodded and walked out of the Qilin hall with Yi Qing. Yi Qing said, "The little brothers have put the medicinal herbs in the library. It's right in front." Xiaoheng said, "Thank you." The two of them walked toward the library together. Yi Qing suddenly sighed and said, "Such a big thing has happened to the former crown princess. The entire palace is in an uproar. Although the former crown princess has been demoted to a commoner, the concubines have watched her grow up. Before dawn, the concubines asked for a decree to go to the imperial ancestral temple to worship the ancestors and pray for the former crown princess. As the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Erhan is also in the ranks of the entourage." Xiaoheng's eyes moved and looked at Yi Qing. "Erhan has been in the imperial ancestral temple all this time?" Yi Qing nodded and said, "Yes, the imperial ancestral temple is in the outer court, which is what the people call the front palace. If the concubines want to go out of the harem, they naturally have the imperial guards to escort them. The concubines prayed until noon. Erhan's imperial guards escorted the concubines back to the harem before leaving. They were clearly assassinated at 9 in the morning. He had already entered the palace at midnight. If Han Yi had been in the imperial ancestral temple all this time, then Han Yi had a perfect alibi. If he had been taken away by the people of the rearguard commandery and accused Han Yi in front of all the officials, he would definitely be judged as framing. Gu Jiao and Han Yi fought, and the Han Yi in the forest was the real one. The Han Yi in the imperial ancestral temple was a substitute, and he used the same disguise technique as him. No wonder Han Yi dared to personally assassinate the doctor invited by the monarch. If he succeeded, it would be best. If they couldn't succeed, they would be jumping into the pit they had dug by testifying against Han Yi. The result would not only be unable to bring down the Han family, but also make the crown princess's injury a trick to frame the Han family and the crown prince. Good calculation, really good calculation. But why did Yi Qing tell him this? Was it unintentional or intentional? "We're here," Yi Qing said to Xiaoheng. "Let's go in." Xiaoheng and Yi Qing entered the library together. The library was very quiet, which complemented Yi Qing's peaceful temperament. Yi Qing looked like an easy-to-get-along-with young man, but with a kind of polite alienation, which didn't let people get too close. The disciples saluted him one by one. Eldest senior brother. Yi Qing nodded politely. Yi Qing took Xiaoheng through rows of bookshelves and came to his desk. He looked at the medicine basket on the table and said, "Ah, it's here." "I'll do it," Xiaoheng said. Xiaoheng stepped forward and picked up the heavy medicine basket, but he didn't know if he was too strong, but he accidentally knocked over a painting scroll on the side. Xiaoheng bowed and picked up the painting scroll. "Sorry." Yi Qing took it, spread it out and smiled. "It's okay, this is the portrait of the imperial grandson painted 3 years ago." The imperial grandson. Xiaoheng's heart flashed a trace of subtlety, and he subconsciously looked at the portrait. When he saw the young man in the portrait, and the familiar mole under the young man's right eye, he was stunned. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg com/89642_896422826/1069840022. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion mobile reading website. Chapter 725. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are available here. In the study of Zhonghe Palace, the monarch was reading through a mountain of memorials. The monarch was a tyrant and a madman, but he was not slacking off on the road of ruling the country diligently. Zhang Dequan was not around as he had gone to the Grand Preceptor Palace. The one serving him was Zhang Dequan's godson, also surnamed Zhang. The people in the palace called him Little Zhang. Little Zhang imitated his godfather's usual way of serving the monarch. He fanned when he should and poured tea when he should. He did not say much. However, when Little Zhang was fanning halfway, the monarch suddenly said in a deep voice, "Stand down." Little Zhang trembled in fright. What happened to His Majesty? Was he not serving the monarch well enough? The monarch said coldly, "Call Zhang Dequan here." "Yes." "Wait." "Your Majesty." "Forget it." "Forget it? Who is it?" "Forget it, forget it." "You go or forget it." "You don't have to go?" Serving His Majesty was indeed not a job that an ordinary person could do. If his godfather was here, he would definitely understand His Majesty's meaning, but he did not. His Majesty had already beaten countless annoying eunuchs to death. Would he also end up without a corpse left behind? If he had known, he would not have curried favor with his godfather and asked for this job. "Your Majesty, Commandant Guan requests an audience," a eunuch reported outside the door. "Come in," the monarch said and frowned at Little Zhang. "Fan him." Little Zhang was relieved. He grabbed the fan and continued fanning the monarch. Commandant Guan Wang Su was here to report to the monarch about the investigation. Wang Su cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, I went to the forest where they encountered the assassin and did not find any useful clues. The people from the commandant's manor wanted to capture the medicine boy for questioning, but they were stopped by the people from the Grand Preceptor Palace." The monarch snorted. "You went to the Grand Preceptor Palace to capture someone. You are very bold." Wang Su lowered his head. This subordinate knows his mistake. Although the rearguard commandery was His Majesty's trusted aide, its status in the imperial court was still inferior to the imperial preceptor hall. There was nothing wrong with capturing a medicine boy for interrogation. The only mistake was that he wanted to do it in the state preceptor's hall. How could the imperial preceptor hall face this? In fact, if the former crown princess was not waiting for the operation, Xiao Lulang would have been called to the rearguard commandery to cooperate with the investigation. "Continue investigating," the monarch said. "Yes." Wang Su cupped his fists. This subject will take his leave. He had come here to test His Majesty's attitude and see if he would allow him to take someone from the Grand Preceptor Hall. It seemed that the Imperial Preceptor Hall still held an unshakable position in His Majesty's heart. After Wang Su left, the monarch continued to force himself to calm down and read the memorials. All of a sudden, a little being was peeking out from outside the door. He seemed to want to come in but was a little hesitant. The moment the monarch looked over, she retracted her little head. The monarch said calmly, "I've seen you. Come in." "Okay." The young Canton princess climbed up the high threshold and jumped in. She did not walk around the desk to the king's side as usual. Instead, she politely stood in front of the desk, wishing that she could be thousands of miles away from the king. The distance between her and the king would never be able to touch her little butt. "Don't you have class today?" the monarch asked. "School is over," the young Canton princess said. "What's the matter?" the monarch asked. The young Canton princess twiddled her little fingers and rolled her eyes. "I want to go outside the palace." The young Canton princess didn't know about Shangguan Yan's matter. No one would talk about this kind of thing with a child, and no one dared to gossip in front of her. Therefore, she didn't know that the monarch had something on his mind. The monarch's face was as bad as ever, but even if he didn't have anything on his mind, the young Canton princess was already used to it. The monarch. Where do you want to go? The young Canton princess. The state preceptor hall. The monarch. Why do you want to go to the state preceptor hall? The young Canton princess said with a guilty conscience. Just for fun. She lost her uncle's thrush bird. She heard that the state preceptor was omnipotent, so she wanted to ask him to help her make an identical thrush bird, so that she didn't have to lie and say that she lent the thrush bird to her classmate. The young Canton princess said in a childish voice, "Your Majesty, take me there." The monarch picked up a booklet and said, "I'm very busy." The young Canton princess said wittily, "Let eunuch Zhang take me there." Eunuch Zhang was stunned. The monarch said, "Zhang de Quan is not here." The young Canton princess opened her mouth. The monarch blocked her way in a second and said, "No one else can." The young Canton princess closed her mouth. The monarch thought that the little bean would use her invincible crying attack, but who would have thought that she didn't? The young Canton princess hung her little head and arms and walked away sadly. The monarch. "Don't you want to struggle?" State Preceptor Hall. Zhang de Quan paced back and forth in the corridor so many times that he felt that the soles of his shoes were worn out. He looked at the iron door that was guarded by 2 men of sacrifice and said anxiously, "It's been more than 2 hours. Why hasn't she come out yet? Is the treatment not going well?" He patted his palm with the back of his hand and said, "What should we do? What should we do?" In the operating room, the operation was coming to an end. The pedicle screws had been inserted into the spine, and the next step was to fix these screws with a metal connecting rod. Traditional surgery used a large incision to completely expose the wound, and the connecting rod could be directly inserted into the pedicle screws slots. However, Gu Jiao was doing percutaneous minimally invasive surgery, so she had to use a special rod inserter to insert the rod from the tail of the pedicle screws, and then cross the slots of each nail. This was a subcutaneous puncture, and the slots were only so big. Gu Jiao's hand couldn't shake at all, otherwise it wouldn't be able to go in. The state preceptor looked at Gu Jiao without blinking. Fortunately, Gu Jiao's hand was very steady. "Seal the cap," Gu Jiao said. The state preceptor handed the cap to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao first tightened the cap on the side without the rod inserter, then took out the rod inserter on the other side, and lifted the cap on the other side. Finally, she removed the tail rod and sutured the wound. Gu Jiao took out the protein thread and did an intradermal suture for Shangguan Yen. This way, she didn't need to remove the suture, and it would look more beautiful after recovery. The only problem was that it was more difficult than an extradermal suture. "You are very attentive to her," the state preceptor said. "Not bad," Gu Jiao said. The state preceptor and Gu Jiao packed up the medical supplies and asked, "How is your brother's recovery?" Gu Jiao raised her eyebrows and said, "Not bad." Gu Jiao introduced her as a friend to the state preceptor, but during the operation, Gu Yan called her sister, so Gu Jiao didn't hide it. Anyway, he knew too much, so he didn't lack this information. After the operation was completed, the state preceptor called an experienced disciple to come over and used the state preceptor's special stretcher to send Shangguan Yen to the side room. Gu Jiao. "Oh, he also knows how to make a stretcher." The state preceptor is not bad. When Zhang de Quan saw Shangguan Yen being pushed out, he rushed forward and asked, "Is the former crown princess okay?" The state preceptor looked at Gu Jiao and said, "Thanks to Dr. Xiao, the operation was very successful." "Ah." Zhang de Quan looked at Gu Jiao in amazement. He really didn't expect this young man's medical skills to be so brilliant. He didn't understand the difficulty of the operation. Xiao Lulang was the first person to be called a doctor by the state preceptor. "Thank you, Dr. Xiao." Zhang de Quan also changed his words. "I will report your contribution to the emperor." Gu Jiao directly handed him a list. Zhang de Quan was stunned. "This is, Gu Jiao. The consultation fee, medicine fee, let your emperor pay no credit." Zhang de Quan. The state preceptor still had some affairs to deal with in the hall, so he left first. Before leaving, He asked someone to call you he. Gu Jiao entered the room with a small medicine box. The other two disciples put Shang Guanyan on the bed, and then retreated. Gu Jiao's operation directly went from noon to the afternoon. The weather was a bit hot, but fortunately the room was ventilated enough. The breeze blew the fragrance of bamboo in the courtyard, making people not so dry. Shang Guanyan's operation was done with general anesthesia. At this time, the anesthetic effect had not yet worn off, so she was sleeping soundly. Her small basket was on the table, but Xiao Heng was not there. Ha! Where is husband? Gu Jiao also put the small medicine box on the table. As soon as her voice fell, Xiao Heng came in with a medicine basket. His expression was somewhat complicated. Seeing Gu Jiao, he was stunned at first, then looked at Shang Guanyan on the bed. You, how are you? Not Shang Guanyan, but how are you? Not only the one who was more seriously injured. Gu Jiao lightly said. I'm fine, she's also fine. The operation was very successful. Will the stitches be removed in a few days? Xiao Heng's impression was that the stitches were removed during the operation. Generally, after removing the stitches, the patient would recover. No need to remove the stitches. Gu Jiao shook her head. But the nails will be removed in half a year to a year. The specific situation depends on her recovery. Nails. Xiao Heng's pupils shrank. Gu Jiao said. There are 8 screws in her spine. Xiao Heng's eyes were cold. His big hands tightly clenched into fists. His mind flashed the back of her seriously digging the watermelon, and the fear of being rejected by him when she handed the watermelon to him, and the hurt and loneliness that flashed in her eyes when he didn't reach out to take it. He didn't know that she would become like this. He didn't know. Gu Jiao gently pulled Xiao Heng's cold fingers. She will get better. Xiao Heng grabbed Gu Jiao's hand, like grasping the last trace of light and reason in the darkness. His mood gradually calmed down. Well, she will get better. He put the medicine basket on the table. The two people's hands didn't separate. They looked at each other and opened their mouths at the same time. Your feet. One sprained, and the other was scratched. It wasn't too obvious at first, but after standing for a long time, the two people's feet were swollen high, almost bursting their shoes. Let me see. Let me see. The two people spoke in unison again. Gu Jiao curved her lips and said, It's okay, I've applied medicine. I've also applied it. Xiao Heng said. Even so, the two still insisted on looking at each other's wounds. Gu Jiao's feet were frighteningly swollen, but it wasn't serious. Xiao Heng's wound was deeper, so Gu Jiao reapplied medicine and bandaged it. Gu Jiao put away the gauze and scissors. Xiao Heng looked at her busy little figure and asked, How did you get rid of Han Yi? Gu Jiao told him about Gu Changqing's appearance. Unfortunately, Qi Xian suddenly appeared and rescued Han Yi. Otherwise, he would have definitely died under Gu Changqing's sword. Of course, Han Yi shouldn't be happy too early. Gu Changqing cut off 2 of his hamstrings. Even if he didn't die, he would be half a cripple. Gu Jiao sat down on the stool next to Xiao Heng and pointed at the medicine basket on the table. Right, what's this? Xiao Heng said. State Teacher Palace's eldest disciple, Yi Qing, just came over. He said that State Teacher prepared medicine for you. And I didn't ask him for any medicine. Gu Jiao put the medicine basket on her lap and casually flipped through it. I don't really need it, so I don't need it. It seemed that Yi Qing's medicine was fake, but the message was real. Was it his own idea, or was it State Teacher's order? If it was State Teacher's order, why would State Teacher do this? He even let him see the portrait of the imperial grandson. If he was really just an ordinary medicine boy, State Teacher wouldn't do this. But he clearly changed his appearance, so how did State Teacher recognize him? Could it be that the rumors were true? That the State Teacher of Great Yin knew everything from astronomy to geography, could divination, and could predict fate? Knock, knock, knock. There was knocking on the door. I'm State Teacher Palace's disciple Yu He. Is young Master Xiao here? I had the kitchen make some food and bring it to you. Gu Jiao yawned. Come in. Yu He stepped in and put the food box on the table. I'll be next door. If young Master Xiao needs anything, feel free to call me. Okay. Gu Jiao said. Yu He looked at the two men tightly holding hands. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He turned around and walked out. Although they were men, but they were quite compatible. Xiaoheng didn't have any appetite. But then he remembered that Gu Jiao also hadn't eaten anything all day, so he asked, "Are you hungry?" Gu Jiao yawned again. I'm okay." Xiaoheng asked softly, "Are you tired?" Gu Jiao sat up straight, her eyes as big as copper bells. "I'm not tired," Xiaoheng said. "Then eat something before you sleep." Gu Jiao, "Okay." In the next second, Xiaoheng's shoulder sank. Gu Jiao's small head leaned down and fell asleep. Xiaoheng felt a burst of heartache and sadness. He put down the lid of the food box, held Gu Jiao's head with his hand, and slowly stood up. His arms went around her back and knees, and gently carried her to the small bed. Her energy was as exuberant as little Jing Kong. She rarely got tired like this. She said it lightly, but the fight with Han Yi was definitely not that simple. Xiaoheng gently rolled up her sleeves and saw the hideous wound. 1, 2, 3. She stood on the operating table with her swollen feet, and raised the scalpel with her scarred arms. Xiaoheng's eyes were slightly hot, and his chest was swollen. Perhaps only at such a time did he dare to show undisguised emotions in his eyes. He didn't want to stand behind and watch the people around him get hurt one by one. Since he couldn't stay out of the whirlpool, he would let the Han family, the crown prince, and all the people who wanted to trample on them, get involved. How old is the crown prince? 19. Do you know his exact birthday? It seems to be in the 12th lunar month. What a coincidence. My birthday is also in the 12th lunar month. It's New Year's Eve. Xiaoheng sat quietly by the table, looking at the portrait he brought from the library. Then he ground the ink, picked up the brush, and dipped it in a drop of ink. Your Majesty. A carriage stopped at the gate of the State Preceptor Hall. The disciples of the State Preceptor Hall hurriedly came forward to salute. The king led the 4-year-old princess out of the carriage. Zhang Dequan followed beside them. The king pointed at the towering gate in front of them and said, "This is the State Preceptor Hall that you wanted to come to." The princess, "Wow." The king snorted. "What's there to wow about? It's not as big as the palace." "Then I still have to wow." She was a child with a sense of ceremony. After the king got out of the carriage, he let go of the princess's hand and let her walk on her own. His strides were bigger than usual, and it was difficult for the princess to keep up. The king went straight to the Qilin Hall. Just as he reached the gate, he ran into the crown prince and his entourage. The entourage was the crown prince, the crown prince's guards, and a few servants carrying brocade boxes. Prince Ming didn't come because he was grounded by the king. When the crown prince saw the king, he bowed respectfully. "Father." The princess politely greeted, "Cousin Crown Prince." The crown prince smiled pleasantly. "Light Shui is here too." The princess nodded. "Yes, I'm here to play." "What are you doing here?" the king asked the crown prince. The crown prince said, "Father, I'm here to visit third sister." The king's face darkened and said to the crown prince, "Who told you that she's your sister?" The crown prince hurriedly bowed. "Father, please calm down. I've misspoken, please forgive me." "Humph." The king coldly entered the hall of the Qilin Hall, and walked to the corridor on the right. The crown prince respectfully followed the king, slightly half a step behind. As he walked, he said casually, "I've just received the news, Han Yi. He had an accident." The king said lightly, "What can happen to him? He was still in the palace this morning." The crown prince said calmly, "It happened after he left the palace. On the way back, he was plotted against and his legs were seriously injured. The whereabouts of the assassin is still unknown." Before he finished, the king pushed open the door to the room where Shang Guanyin was resting. They saw a tall and handsome figure sitting by the bed. He was wearing a plain white gown, and his hair was as black as ink. His hair was tied behind his head with a white ribbon. A light breeze blew by, causing his hair tie and black hair to flutter, and it slowly emitted a scholarly temperament that was like an ink painting. Yet it also faintly revealed a trace of the nobility of the imperial family. "Who are you?" the crown prince frowned and asked. The other party stood up and turned around unhurriedly. The crown prince suddenly had an ominous premonition. "I can't let him turn around. I can't." No, unfortunately it was too late. Not only did he turn around, but he also revealed a face that was almost the same as the young man in the portrait. Auspicious phoenix eyes with a mole. A 19-year-old handsome face with a trace of clean youth. The crown prince's face suddenly changed. The king looked at Xiao Heng in a daze and walked toward him step by step. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1069666812. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 726. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. Xiao Heng's clothes were not made of very expensive fabric, but when he wore a plain shirt, he still looked handsome and magnificent. The room was very quiet. No one knew if it was because they were mesmerized by him, or because of the king's reaction. Everyone didn't dare to breathe. Or maybe both. The crown prince summoned his courage and called out, "Father, father?" The king didn't hear him, or maybe he heard and ignored him. From the door to the bed, the king took a long time to walk the short distance of more than 10 steps. He was already past the age where he would be excited about something. His myriad of emotions were hidden in his weather-beaten eyes. He came to the front of the child. The last time the two met face to face, the imperial grandson was only a 5-year-old child. He was less than 2 years old when he returned to Xingdu with Shang Guanyan. When he was 3 years old, the Xianyuan family rebelled. When he was 4 years old, the Xianyuan family was destroyed. When he was 5 years old, he was imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum with the crown princess. Since then, the king could only see him from afar in the state preceptor's palace almost every 2 years. But every time, the king would ask the state preceptor to draw his portrait, so he recognized this child, no matter how far he was. The king stopped and stared at Xiao Heng. "Qing." Xiao Heng's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. "Your Majesty?" Everyone was stunned. The king was stunned. "Do you still remember me?" "Xiao Heng." "Wait, shouldn't I remember you? I come back to Xingdu every 2 years. Don't you two see each other?" This kind of small situation was naturally not difficult for Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng glanced at the crown prince, who still hadn't recovered from the shock, and said without changing his expression, "That person called you father. I think, except for His Majesty, no one in the Yan kingdom can afford this title." The king came back to his senses. "So you just recognized me. No wonder you left so quickly in the carriage last time." Xiao Heng paused for a moment before he realized what carriage, what last time. "No way. Are you that bald old man over there?" This happened the night he was chased by Han Yi. The men of sacrifice who came to save him threw him into a carriage. The carriage was split open, and he only recognized Zhang Dequan. The monarch asked, "Since you've come to Xingdu, why don't you show up? Why didn't you return to the palace to find me?" Xiao Heng lowered his eyes and said with a sad face, "Because someone is trying to kill me. My mother told me to hide and not come out. But when I heard that my mother was injured, I really can't continue to hide." The monarch's face darkened. The crown prince was a little surprised. First of all, he didn't recognize Xiao Heng. When he first saw him, he really thought that Shang Guanqing had returned. It wasn't until he heard the word kill that he snapped out of his daze. He didn't send anyone to kill Xiao Lulang. From the beginning to the end, he only dealt with Xiao Lulang. That boy's original name was Xiao Heng. His father was Xiao Ji, Marquis Xianping of Zhao Country. When he was 14 years old, he sent someone to assassinate Xiao Heng, who knew that Xiao Heng faked his death and escaped and survived as Xiao Lulang. Sometimes, the crown prince habitually called him Xiao Lulang. But it didn't make sense. Hadn't the mole under Xiaoheng's right eye been removed? So was this Sheng Guanqing or Xiaoheng? He felt that it was more likely to be Xiaoheng. After all, Xiaoheng was in Chengdu. On the contrary, there had been no news of Sheng Guanqing for a long time. But Xiaoheng didn't know his background, did he? How could he come to pretend to be Sheng Guanqing? The crown prince's mind was in a mess. There was no way for him to sort out his thoughts on this occasion. On the other hand, the young commandery princess at the side skipped in. The monarch introduced, Light Shui, this is Sheng Guanqing. According to seniority, you should call her little aunt. The young commandery princess went to Lingbo Academy for a long time, and always interacted with little Jing Kong, who was her age. She almost forgot that she was a junior. She quickly straightened her back, and looked up at Xiaoheng with a serious face. She said, I am Sheng Guanshui. This person was so good-looking. She really wanted to grab her face and scream. The young commandery princess had actually met Xiaoheng on the first day of class at Lingbo Academy. However, at that time, Xiaoheng was wearing the uniform of Kanglin Women's Academy. His face was covered with a veil, so no one could see his appearance. Xiaoheng pretended that it was the first time he met the young commandery princess. He knelt down on one knee and looked at the little girl at the same level. He smiled and said, Hello, Aunt Light Shui. Countless pink bubbles appeared on the young commandery princess's head. This nephew was so cute. Unlike Ming Junwang, that annoying fellow. From today onwards she would protect him. The young commandery princess's eyes were so bright that they could sparkle like stars. However, she tried to be reserved and calm on the surface. She said, Well, hello, little nephew. Sheng Guanqing followed his mother's surname, which was somewhat similar to the child of a woman's son-in-law. Therefore, he was not the emperor's grandson. He should not call the emperor grandfather, but imperial grandfather. However, Xiaoheng would not easily call him imperial grandfather. Based on the emperor's attitude towards him, Xiaoheng had a preliminary judgment of the emperor's grandson's position in the emperor's mind. The emperor cared about this grandson to a higher degree than he had imagined. Xiaoheng's decision was actually very risky. If the emperor did not like Sheng Guanqing, then he would have exposed himself in vain. There were two people lying on the two beds in the room. One was Sheng Guanyan, who had just finished an operation and was still in a coma. The other was Gu Jiao, who was so tired that she fell asleep. The emperor's eyes swept over the two people, and finally fell on Sheng Guanyan's body. He asked, Did the doctor say how is your mother's condition? Xiaoheng looked at the sleeping Gu Jiao, clenched his fingers and said, I heard from the doctor surnamed Xiao that my mother broke her spine in 2 places. In order to save my mother's life, 8 nails were inserted into my mother's back. Iron nails into the bone. The emperor's aura instantly turned cold. His murderous aura instantly filled the entire room. The young commandery princess, who was not afraid of him, subconsciously jumped to Xiaoheng's feet. She turned her head to look at the emperor and hugged Xiaoheng's thigh, becoming his little nephew's leg accessory. Xiaoheng did not move and let her hang there. The emperor was very angry about the crown princess's serious injury. It was unknown whether it was because of the remaining father-daughter relationship, or because the emperor's prestige was provoked. Xiaoheng secretly planned in his heart what to say next. I heard that my mother slipped and fell from the hillside. The emperor looked at him. My mother's martial arts were abolished before she went to the imperial mausoleum. This matter was known to everyone, and was not a secret. Xiaoheng had already heard about it. But the next few words depended on Xiaoheng's guess based on Sheng Guanyan's performance in Tianxiang Pavilion. But these years, in order to train my body, my mother would accompany me to practice martial arts. I am not talented and did not learn much, but my mother learned a little bit. Directly saying that Sheng Guanyan practiced martial arts again, it would seem that she had bad intentions. But if she said that she taught Sheng Guanqing, who was weak and sickly, there was no doubt. The emperor recalled Sheng Guanyan's appearance when she climbed over the wall of the cold palace. Her martial arts were indeed a bit mediocre. She shouldn't be too powerful. Otherwise, she wouldn't have crawled out of the palace through the dog hole. Martial Aunt Nan was also abolished of her martial arts. Xiaoheng knew the highest level of martial arts that could be achieved if she practiced martial arts again. Therefore, he did not advocate Shang Guanyan's martial arts. He then said, "My mother is very clever and has a little martial arts. I don't believe that she would fall like this. That's the imperial palace, ah. Is there someone who dares to do something to your mother in the imperial palace?" The crown prince wanted to say so, but if he really said so, it would make him look very suspicious. The crown prince strode forward and personally moved a stool for the emperor to sit down by the bed. Oh, filial piety is still his. He actually let the emperor stand for so long. Imperial father. The crown prince helped the monarch to sit down and said with a pained expression, "This son also feels that there is something fishy about this matter. Since you have already grounded third Shang Guanyan, this son believes that she will not run out of Zhaoyang Hall without permission. Perhaps she found someone suspicious, so she chased after them." My goodness, on the surface, he said that Shang Guanyan's injury was suspicious, but in fact he secretly emphasized that Shang Guanyan disobeyed the emperor's ban. Who told you to run out of Zhaoyang Hall in the middle of the night? If you obediently listened to the emperor's words, wouldn't everything be fine? If this is not asking for it, then what is it? The young Junju didn't understand what they were talking about. She hung motionlessly on her nephew's leg, like a confused little fruit. Xiao Heng's eyes were cold, and with the temperament of a young man he said, "How does your royal highness know that my mother was lured out and not kidnapped?" The crown prince choked. "This," Xiao Heng coldly said. "I heard that not long after my mother returned to the imperial palace, your royal highness ordered the guards to hurt my mother." The crown prince refuted. "I didn't. It was the guards who did it. I wanted to stop them, but it was too late. The cause was your mother pushed me. She pushed me down the steps of the pavilion. Do you know how high the pavilion is?" Xiao Heng asked back. "So your royal highness held a grudge and let people throw my mother down from the high hillside?" The crown prince's eyes trembled, and he suddenly raised his voice. "I didn't." "Enough, stop quarreling," the emperor sternly said. The young Junju plugged her small ears with her fingers. The emperor said to Zhang Dequan, "Take the young Junju out." "Yes." Zhang Dequan came over and took the young Junju out. "What's the situation?" "We'll know when your mother wakes up." "How is your body?" the emperor asked Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng was about to say that he was fine, but he remembered that Shang Guanqing was sick. He changed his youthful aura and weakly said, "Still the same." The emperor said, "Since you're here, let the state preceptor take a look at you." Xiao Heng didn't speak. The emperor frowned and looked at him. "What's wrong?" Xiao Heng lowered his eyes and whispered, "Anyway, it can't be cured. You don't have to waste medicinal materials on me." The emperor looked at his weak and sick grandson, and then looked at Shang Guanyan, who was seriously injured and unconscious. He deeply frowned. The room once again fell into a strange silence. The crown prince's heart gradually sank. The emperor was old. Although he was still temperamental and tyrannical, there was an inch of his heart that was not so hard. This point could be seen from his attitude toward the young Junju. He was not so tolerant of the young Shang Guanyan. Did he like the young Junju more? No, he was not as cruel as he was when he was young. Shang Guanyan's injury and the emperor's grandson's illness hit the flesh of his heart. The Xianyuan family was destroyed at the right time. If it was now, who could guarantee that the emperor would raise the butcher's knife to the Xianyuan family? Even the babies in swaddling clothes? The crown prince cupped his hands and saluted. "Father, let me investigate this matter. I will definitely find out what happened last night, and give justice to third sister." This time the emperor didn't correct him when he said third sister. The crown prince secretly clenched his fingertips. "I have my own ideas on this matter." The emperor refused. The crown prince was not surprised by his father's decision. He didn't really want to take the matter into his own hands. He just wanted to show his attitude in front of his father. The emperor looked at Shang Guanyan with a complicated look and said to Xiao Heng, "Take good care of your mother. You didn't touch your bedroom." The last sentence was undoubtedly to welcome the emperor's grandson back to the palace. Xiao Heng said almost without thinking, "No, I want to stay in the state preceptor palace to accompany my mother to recover." The emperor didn't say much, stood up and walked out of the door. The crown prince asked the servant to leave the tonic and turned to follow. When he crossed the threshold, the emperor's footsteps paused slightly, as if he was waiting for something. However, he didn't see it in the end. Xiao Heng did it deliberately. He knew that the emperor was waiting for him to call him imperial grandfather. In fact, it was just an act. He could call him imperial grandfather 100 times, but he didn't want the emperor to get his wish too early. After all, he didn't cherish things that were too easy to get. Xiao Heng carefully recalled his performance just now and made sure that he didn't make any big mistakes. The emperor's affection for Shang Guanqing's grandfather and grandson was an unexpected surprise. One of the reasons for the emperor's preference for Shang Guanqing should be that Shang Guanqing didn't have long to live. The emperor was afraid of all people related to the Xianyuan family, but a grandson who didn't have long to live was not a threat to his imperial power. The crown prince's performance today was very mediocre. He was impulsive and easily angered, but combined with the crown prince's secret actions, he speculated that it was just a disguise. The purpose was to make people think that he couldn't hide things in his heart and couldn't play tricks. Xiao Heng touched the mole under his right eye that was dotted with ink and said lightly, "Then let's see who can pretend better." The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1069493112. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile version reading website. Chapter 727. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are available here. After coming out of the Kailan Hall, the monarch went to find the young princess. The crown prince said goodbye to the monarch and got on the carriage to return home. When the carriage was far away from the imperial preceptor hall, he changed his impulsive and irritable expression and became serious and restrained. The carriage traveled on the spacious street. He said in a deep voice, "Do you know who I saw in the imperial preceptor hall just now?" On the bench beside him sat a man in the official uniform of the commandery. His surname was Xiao and his name was Xue. He was the commandant of Fengche and was in charge of all the carriages and ceremonial guards in the Great Yen Palace. The authority between the commandants was not constant. Occasionally, they would infiltrate each other. Xiao Xue was once responsible for investigating the assassination of the crown prince. Everyone thought he was the confidant of the Wang family, but they didn't know that he had been used by the crown prince. He had even accompanied the crown prince to the Tianqiong Academy to watch the boxing competition. "Your Highness, who did you see?" Xiao Xue asked. The crown prince said, "I saw the eldest grandson." "The eldest grandson returned to Chengdu?" Xiao Xue was surprised. The crown prince smiled faintly. "Surprised, right? I didn't receive any news. I suspect that he is not the real Shang Guanqing. He is Xiao Heng." Xiao Xue asked, "That Xiao Lulang?" The crown prince nodded. "It's him." As the crown prince's confidant, Xiao Xue naturally knew that Xiao Heng had come to Chengdu. He asked, did he reveal his identity, or was he pretending to be Shang Guanqing? "Pretending to be Shang Guanqing," the crown prince said and frowned. "I'm not sure." Xiao Xue looked at the crown prince in confusion. "Your Highness, what are you not sure about?" The crown prince sighed. "I'm not sure whether that person is Xiao Heng or Shang Guanqing. They look so similar that I can't tell them apart." The crown prince and Shang Guanqing had not seen each other for more than 10 years. He only took advantage of the time when Shang Guanqing returned to Sheng capital to sneak a peek near the state preceptor's hall, or look at the portrait. He did not know much about the grown-up Shang Guanqing, so he could not distinguish the two from their behavior and voices. The crown prince said, "Even my father couldn't recognize it, let alone me. Xiao Xue said. This is the brilliance of the dethroned crown princess. She let Shang Guanqing stay away from Chengdu and not have any contact with anyone, so as to minimize the distinguishing features other than his appearance. Once Shang Guanqing dies of illness, she can take Xiaoheng back to her side, and no one will know that it's someone else. The crown prince paused and said, although there are rumors among the people that father dotes on Shang Guanqing because he doesn't have long to live, what if the eldest grandson's illness is cured and father still dotes on him? I can't take that risk. Xiao Xue said, yes, His Majesty is old, and he's not as ruthless as he was when he was young. He killed Empress Xuanyuan's entire family. It's hard to guarantee that he won't make up for it on Empress Xuanyuan's children and grandchildren in his twilight years. The crown prince's eyes turned sharp. So Xiaoheng must die. Once Xiaoheng died, Shang Guanyin would not be able to live. Xiao Xue pondered for a moment and said, in fact, it's not difficult to identify whether the other party is Xiaoheng or not. There are two people who must have dealt with Shang Guanqing. The crown prince thought for a moment. You mean the state preceptor? He may not help me. That guy is stubborn and won't be roped in by any force. Xiao Xue said in his heart. That's because no force can be above the state preceptor's hall. To put it bluntly, no one is qualified to rope him in. The crown prince shook his head. What's more, he and Shang Guanqing only met once in 2 years. They don't know much about each other. As for the slight difference in voice, it can be said that he changed his voice. Xiaoheng is a man. How can his voice be the same when he was a teenager? Xiao Xue pointed out. Did your highness forget that there is another person? The crown prince. Who? Xiao Xue. Wang Su. The crown prince was slightly stunned. Him? He has been stationed in the imperial mausoleum for several years, and personally taught Shang Guanqing martial arts. If there is anyone who can identify the real Shang Guanqing, it's him. Xiao Xue said, His Majesty hates it when people deceive him. If the person your highness saw today is really Xiaoheng, then Xiaoheng has committed the crime of deceiving the emperor. You're right. The crown prince deeply agreed. But there's one thing I can't figure out. Why doesn't Xiaoheng directly recognize the emperor, but uses Shang Guanqing's identity? Xiao Xue said, because it's much simpler to use Shang Guanqing's identity. If Xiaoheng used his own identity, then it would involve who Shang Guanqing was, what the crown princess's intentions were, how much the emperor had been deceived over the years, and so on. Of course, the crown princess could say that she did this because someone wanted to harm Xiaoheng. But the problem was that she couldn't produce any evidence. Would the emperor believe her without any evidence? With the emperor's suspicious personality, he would only think that the mother and son were plotting something behind his back. So to be on the safe side, it was safer for Xiaoheng to disguise himself as Shang Guanqing. Not only would there be no complications, but he could also receive all the love from the emperor. In addition, Xiao Xue faintly felt that perhaps Xiaoheng didn't want to become a member of the Yan royal family. If he used Shang Guanqing's identity, he could leave without any burden after the deed was done. But soon, Xiao Xue denied this guess. He was the eldest grandson of the most powerful Shangzhou kingdom's emperor. Who wouldn't want such an identity? He shouldn't overestimate Xiaoheng's temperament. He wasn't so indifferent to fame and fortune. Everything was just a matter of weighing the pros and cons. The crown prince was at his wit's end. You're right, but what if he's really Shang Guanqing? Xiao Xue sneered. Then it's even easier. It's much easier to expose Shang Guanqing than Xiaoheng. We didn't expose him before because there was no need. Anyway, Shang Guanqing won't live long, and he didn't cause trouble in Chengdu. As long as he stays in the imperial mausoleum, we can pretend that he doesn't exist. The one we want to get rid of is Xiaoheng from the beginning to the end. But if Shang Guanqing is not afraid of death and comes to Chengdu to make trouble, then don't blame us for being rude. The crown prince smiled with appreciation. I really can't live without you. Xiao Xue cupped his hands. Your Highness, you flatter me. How could the crown prince not understand this? He just said it through his mouth. The crown prince seemed to be innocent, but in fact, he was more shrewd than anyone else. The crown prince said, there is still a problem. The Wang family is only loyal to my father. I want to ask Wang Su to work for me, but I'm afraid Wang Su won't agree. Xiao Shui smiled. Your Highness, you just need to cater to his liking. This subordinate heard that Wang Su has taken a fancy to an antique. That antique is now in the hands of the Han family's old man. The crown prince smiled. It's in the hands of my uncle. Then it's much easier. In the state preceptor hall's ward, Xiao Heng took out Shang Guanqing's portrait and looked at it carefully. Gu Qingfeng used his qinggong to come to the courtyard, opened the window to the maximum, and jumped in from the windowsill. How's it going? You didn't expose yourself, right? No, Xiao Heng said. Gu Qingfeng came to Xiao Heng and sat down. He looked at the sleeping Shang Guanyan, and then looked at the sleeping Gu Jiao. Then he reached out his hand to Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng looked at him strangely. What? Gu Qingfeng raised his hand. 2 taels of silver. Did I buy the clothes you're wearing for nothing? 1 tael of silver is for the clothes, and 1 tael of silver is for the travel expenses. Why don't you think about how much credit this set of clothes has contributed to your success? People rely on clothes, and Buddha relies on gold. Today, you're here to perform. Without this set of clothes, you can't set up a stage. Do you know how difficult it is to find a set of clothes similar to the one in the portrait? Xiao Heng said. I don't have any money on me. When Jiao Jiao wakes up, I'll ask her to give it to you. Gu Qingfeng choked. Then forget it. Asking that girl to give him money, isn't that the same as asking for her life? It would be good if he didn't empty his wallet. Gu Qingfeng's eyes fell on the portrait. Is the person in this portrait really the imperial grandson? Why do I feel that he looks like you? You guys aren't twins, are you? No. Xiao Heng said. How do you know? Gu Qingfeng asked. His birthday is different. His birthday is 10 days earlier than mine. He asked Yi Qing in the library. Gu Qingfeng said. Birthdays can be faked. Isn't Ming Junwang the same age as Shang Guanqing? Let me guess, is it because he's older than Ming Junwang and can be the imperial grandson? Xiao Heng looked confused. Is that so? Gu Qingfeng said that he believed it. Don't worry about this. When Shang Guanyan wakes up, everything will be revealed. Right now there are more important things for them to do. Xiao Heng said. There is one person who may know that I'm not Shang Guanqing. Gu Qingfeng's action of pouring tea stopped. Who? Xiao Heng looked at a green leaf on a branch outside the window. His eyes were cold as he said, Military Officer Guan Wangsu. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89642/1069448882. HTML Genius remembers this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 728. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. It was no secret that Commandant Guan Wangsu taught Shang Guanqing martial arts in the Imperial Mausoleum. Xiao Heng had heard about it a long time ago. But he didn't expect that one day he would have to pretend to be Shang Guanqing. Wangsu, this hidden danger must be solved. It didn't mean that he had to kill him, but it was enough to prevent him from coming out and disrupting their plans. Gu Qingfeng curled his lips and patted his chest. Who else could do such an important thing except for him? Remember to give me the money. You take it first. I'll ask you for it later. After Gu Qingfeng emphasized his 2 taels of silver, he went out from where he got them. His martial arts were not good, but his lightness skill was superb. He didn't alarm the men of sacrifice in the Imperial Preceptor Palace. Remember to pick up Jing Kong, Xiao Heng said, looking at his back. Xiao Heng watched Gu Qingfeng's back paused in midair, as if he was gritting his teeth and complaining about him. Then he disappeared from the Imperial Preceptor Palace with hidden bitterness. The room became quiet again. Although so many things had happened, not much time had passed. In just half an hour, he completed the change of identity from Xiao Heng to Shang Guanqing. He met the monarch and confronted the crown prince. There was no way out. After today, he would put himself in the whirlpool of power in Xingdu. Everyone would know that he was back. There was more than one force spying on them in the dark. But the whirlpool of power in Xingdu was destined to be bigger and bigger, until all the people who had hurt them were swallowed up. The commandant's mansion was located outside the Great Yan Imperial Palace. To enter from the outside, one had to pass through the Gao Gate, Fengtian Gate, and Duan Gate. Gu Qingfeng paced back and forth outside the Gao Gate, secretly wondering whether he should sneak in or wait here. I forgot to ask if Wang Su is in the Imperial Court. If he has already left, then no matter if I sneak in or wait for him outside, there will be no result. No, he should be here. His Majesty had met with Xiao Heng. Based on my understanding of Xiao Heng, even if there wasn't anything fishy about the former crown princess injury, Xiao Heng would still find something fishy about it. Since the monarch trusts Wang Su so much, he will definitely send Wang Su to investigate the case. And the crime scene was in the harem. Gu Qingfeng was deeply amazed by his own wit. How did I become so smart? As expected of me. Wang Su was indeed investigating the case in the harem, but he couldn't find any clues. The scene was very clean, except for the traces of Shang Guanyan's fall. There were only the footprints left by her personal palace maid. In addition, there were several kinds of footprints that belonged to the eunuchs who came to move Shang Guanyan. All of them have been eliminated as suspects. Seems like he's an expert who knows Qinggong. Wang Su stood on the hillside, looked at the place where Shang Guanyan had fallen and jumped. This was a steep slope, but the walls of the slope were covered with vines. Even if one were to randomly grab one or two vines, they would still be able to grab one or two. Wang Su carefully examined the scene for half an hour, and finally left with a sullen face. He was an outsider. Although he was ordered to enter the harem to investigate the case, he couldn't walk in the harem without permission. Li Sandy from the Zhanghe Palace followed him. Li Sandy didn't say much and just followed him silently. When the two were about to leave the harem, a eunuch in his early 30s suddenly walked toward them. Oh, isn't this Wang Darren and Eunuch Li? What a coincidence. He greeted with a smile. Li Sandy slightly bowed and said very politely, Eunuch Su. This eunuch's surname was Su and his name was Gao. He was the favorite person of Imperial concubine Han. Su Gao smiled and looked at Wang Su chatting with him. Wang Darren came to investigate the case, right? I don't know if Wang Darren has any clues. Not for the time being, Wang Su said. Su Gao's eyes flashed with a trace of loss. So it's like this. Wang Su said. It may not be man-made, maybe it's just an accident. Su Gao sighed. Yes, the harem is an important place. Ordinary assassins don't have the courage or the ability to enter. In any case, I hope Wang Darren can find out the truth as soon as possible. Don't let the former crown princess get hurt in vain. Wang Su said. If there's nothing else, I'll go first. Su Gao smiled and said, Wang Darren, take care. Wang Su went out of the harem. Li Sandy sent him out of the Meridian Gate. Walking on the bluestone path in front of the palace, Wang Su slowly spread out his palm. It was a hooked silk thread. It was found in the thorny bushes on the hillside. There were no footprints in that place. If this silk thread didn't come from Shang Guanyan's clothes, then it must belong to the murderer. Gu Jiao slept for a long time, but Shang Guanyan woke up first. The effect of the anesthetic had largely faded, and her mind was sober. She opened her eyes and looked at the strange roof in a trance. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Awake? Xiao Heng came over and looked at her. Today, Xiao Heng didn't wear a mask, revealing his face. Shang Guanyan stared at him, her mouth couldn't close. After a long while, she closed her eyes. I'm dreaming. He was the person she could only see in her dreams. Xiao Heng sat down on her bed and looked at her. Does your wound hurt? Hurt. Shang Guanyan was startled. It hurts. She was hurting all over. This wasn't a dream. She opened her eyes and looked at Xiaoheng with shining eyes. Xiaoheng smiled softly. Shang Guanyin suddenly felt embarrassed. She couldn't move, only her eyes rolled around in her eye sockets. Then, her ears turned red at a visible speed. Huh. Xiaoheng was slightly surprised. You weren't like this when you were in Tianxiang Pavilion. You didn't feel ashamed when you watched me and Jiao Jiao doing this and that. I thought you were as good as my father. Shang Guanyin was injured in more than one place. She was wrapped like a rice dumpling. She moved her fingers. Xiaoheng saw it and asked her, "What do you want to take?" "A handkerchief," she said. Xiaoheng asked strangely, "What do you want to do with a handkerchief?" Shang Guanyin sternly said, "To cover my face, I'm shy." Xiaoheng, Jiao Jiao and State Preceptor performed an operation on you. The operation was very successful. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Xiaoheng asked. No, Shang Guanyin said and looked at Gu Jiao on the small bed. Xiaoheng followed her gaze and looked. She's asleep. Shang Guanyin softened her voice. Then let's talk in a low voice. Xiaoheng smiled. Okay. Shang Guanyin looked at his flash of a smile. And her eyes also flashed with a trace of bright charm. However, suddenly, she realized something and her expression slightly changed. This is the State Preceptor's palace? You. How can you come to the State Preceptor's palace? Xiaoheng calmly said. I met the Emperor and the Crown Prince. I told them that I am Shang Guanqing. Shang Guanyin opened her mouth wide. Xiaoheng continued. I saw Shang Guanqing's portrait. In a flash, Shang Guanyin's eyes flashed with countless complex emotions. She looked at Xiaoheng in a daze. She wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she only carefully probed. You know everything? Xiaoheng nodded. In. Shang Guanyin was stunned. Know what? Xiaoheng said. Life experience. Shang Guanyin's eyes flashed with shock again, but she quickly calmed down. How do you know? I guessed it. Xiaoheng said truthfully. His behavior in Tianxiang Pavilion that day was very clear. Coupled with his various encounters, the various news revealed by Yi Qing, and even Zhang Dequan's shout of His Highness Zhangsun, that night, he was getting closer and closer to his life experience. When he saw Shang Guanqing's portrait, he finally had an answer to this question. He was Shang Guanyin's child. It's just that he was not completely sure about his relationship with Shang Guanqing. Who is Shang Guanqing? My brother? Twin brother? A negative tone. Xiaoheng opened his mouth. Then he is. Shang Guanyin bit her lips and whispered after a long while. Xiaoqing. Xiaoheng was not surprised by this answer. There was no other reason than Shang Guanqing's birthday was Xiaoqing's birthday. At that time, Xiaoheng and Xiaoqing were poisoned at the same time. There was only one antidote. In order to let Xiaoheng get the antidote, Shang Guanyin hid Shang Guanqing and told Xian Pingho that she killed him. The process of making Xian Pingho believe it was not easy, so Shang Guanyin didn't want to mention it. Even later, Shang Guanyin almost died when she faked her own death. Shang Guanyin looked at Xiaoheng with a nervous and perturbed look. Do you think I'm too cruel? In order to let her son get the antidote, she deprived Xiaoqing's chance to live. It was difficult to say who was right and who was wrong. He was not her, so he didn't know what kind of struggle she had in her heart. She only wanted her son to live on. All these years, she had been burdened with what she owed Xiaoqing and Xinyang, as well as the longing for her own flesh and blood. Perhaps anyone in the world could accuse her of being heartless, but Xiaoheng, who had survived because of her heartless nature, could not. I won't. Xiaoheng said. How did you think of taking Xiaoqing away? Shang Guanyin whispered. I wanted to take him back to the Imperial Teacher Hall, and see if the Imperial Teacher Hall can cure him. You might ask me why I didn't take you away, and see if the Imperial Teacher Hall can cure you. In fact, even if I knew the current situation and had to do it all over again, I would still make the same choice as before. The Imperial Teacher Hall was a way out, not the best way. She would rather be condemned by everyone. She would rather bear the infamy of her previous life. She still wanted to be a selfish mother. All of the crimes and suffering would be left to her to bear. Her Ahing just needed to live well. You are not afraid that Princess Xianyang will kill me to avenge her son? Princess Xianyang was not a weak woman. She was also very decisive. Of course, he was not accusing her of being naive. He just wanted to know more about what she had experienced. The good, the bad, the dangerous, the things he had struggled with, and the things he had missed all these years. Shang Guanyin said, Xian Pinghe will not let her know that her son was killed by me. You really understand my father. He did indeed lie to Princess Xianyang, saying that Xiaoqing died at the hands of assassins. It was only later that Princess Xianyang found out under the instigation of some people. However, she did not succeed in killing me. At the last moment, she carried me out of the fire. Shang Guanyin blamed herself. It was all because I attracted those assassins. Otherwise, you too would not have been poisoned. Xiaoheng hesitated for a moment, but still decided to tell her. Those assassins were not attracted by you. They were left behind by the previous emperor. That year, the people who poisoned me and Xiaoqing were the dragon shadow guards that the previous emperor of Zhao country left to my mother. The one they really wanted to poison was Xiaoqing. I was poisoned because they were careless. This tragedy had nothing to do with Shang Guanyin. If there was someone to blame, it could only be blamed on the previous emperor. And in a sense, it was fortunate that Shang Guanyin took Xiaoqing away. Otherwise, they would have continued to poison Xiaoqing. At that time, Long Yi was not there. Xian Pinghe and Princess Xianyang did not suspect the dragon shadow guards. It was really impossible to guard against. Shang Guanyin had been living in guilt for Xiaoqing all these years. When she heard this news, she found it hard to believe. Are you deliberately making up a story to comfort me? Xiaoheng shook his head. I'm not. I can't make up this story. The previous emperor's brain circuit was similar to that of the great Yin emperor. They were both crazy and ruthless. When Princess Xianyang married Xian Pinghe, it was to prevent him from rebelling. Once he had the thought of rebelling, Princess Xianyang would immediately let the dragon shadow guards kill him. The previous emperor knew that Princess Xianyang could not get along with men. He was not worried that Princess Xianyang would fall in love with Xian Pinghe. But after all, the two were husband and wife. In case Xian Pinghe used force to make Princess Xianyang give birth to his child, who could guarantee that Princess Xianyang would not be soft-hearted because of the child? Therefore, the previous emperor issued an order to the dragon shadow guards that even Princess Xianyang did not know about. The child of Princess Xianyang and Xian Pinghe could not be kept. From Xiaoheng's many years of observation, Princess Xianyang was not soft-hearted toward Xian Pinghe. If you asked her to stab Xian Pinghe with a knife, she would not even blink. The previous emperor really thought too much. Since ancient times, emperors have always been suspicious, harming others and themselves. Moreover, there was one thing that the previous emperor was wrong about. One of them did use force, but the one who was forced was Xian Pinghe. The past was unbearable to recall. As expected, Xiaoheng did not think about the entanglement between Princess Xianyang and Xian Pinghe. He spoke out another doubt in his heart. But since Xiaoqing and I are not twins, why do we look exactly the same? As he spoke, he pointed at the mole under his right eye. Even this mole is the same? Shang Guanyin embarrassedly said. This is because I gave him a face-changing mask. Xiaoheng and Xiaoqing were half-brothers. In terms of appearance, there was a certain degree of similarity. For example, the two's face and nose were very similar to Xian Pinghe. But their eyebrows were not the same. Xiaoqing inherited Princess Xianyang's almond eyes and flat eyebrows, looking gentle and weak. Xiaoheng inherited Shang Guanyin's phoenix eyes and slightly raised eyebrows, with a trace of heroic spirit. When he smiled, it was particularly warm and healing. This was also why everyone who had seen the young Marquis of Zhaodu called him a gentle as jade. A youth who made people feel like they were bathed in the spring breeze. But later, Xiaoheng had an accident and was stranded among the common people. The smile on his face was less, and the gentleness in his eyes disappeared. He was covered with a layer of invisible sharp armor. In the early years, I didn't care too much about the problem of appearance. Until one time, I heard a servant whisper that this child didn't look like me at all. When he was young, it was hard to tell, but the older he grew, the more he didn't look like me. I was anxious. The state preceptor Hall was willing to treat Xiaoqing, because he was the eldest grandson of the emperor. If people found out that he wasn't, he wouldn't be able to continue receiving treatment. So, I sent someone to Zhao country and got your portrait. Then, I drew the parts that didn't look like you. Speaking of this, Shang Guanyin paused. It was at that time that your identity was exposed, letting the crown prince know of your existence. Xiao Heng suddenly understood. So that's how it is. Then everything made sense. Xiao Heng touched the mole on his face. Shang Guanqing had drawn it according to him. Now that his mole was gone, was he imitating Shang Guanqing or imitating himself? He really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? Shang Guanyin looked at him and asked. Xiao Heng said, my mole is actually gone. At that time, Princess Xianyang, in order to not let those people easily find him, burned the mole on his face after a big fire. He changed his appearance, and his voice and figure were different from before. In addition, he lost the mole. Even his own father, Marquis Xianping, spent a lot of effort to confirm that it was him. Shang Guanyin gently said, she is really good to you. Her tone was gratified, but also sad and lonely. In the end, she still missed it. In his 19 years of life, there was never a mark of her. Can I call you Aheng? The crown princess was born to be respected. Even if she was executed in public in the throne room, she never lowered her noble head and never begged. But at this time, just asking if she could call him that, she used up all the humility in her bones. Xiao Heng said, you can call me whatever you want. Then can you please call me? Shang Guanyin didn't say this. She lowered her eyes and endured the sadness and bitterness in her heart. Can't cry. The descendants of the Xian Yuan family shed blood but not tears. She didn't cry when she gave birth to a child. She didn't cry when her bones were broken. She didn't cry. In fact, Xiao Heng still had a lot of things he wanted to ask her. For example, what happened last night? What happened more than 10 years ago? Why did she become a slave? Xiao Heng looked at her weak body and said, you rest for a while. I will go and get something to eat. Okay. Her voice was choked with sobs. She tried hard to suppress it. Xiao Heng stood up and stopped in his tracks. Shang Guanyan's heart suddenly jumped. Is he going to call me? Is it? Xiao Heng said. I forgot to ask you what you want to eat. You just had an operation. Millet porridge and barley porridge are both good. Oh. Shang Guanyin was disappointed and said in a low voice, both are fine. Xiao Heng, then millet porridge? Shang Guanyin. Okay. She had no appetite. She was a bad woman. She didn't deserve to be his mother. Xiao Heng stepped to the door. When he was about to cross the threshold, he stopped again. It may be a bit late to say this, but he turned around and looked at her sincerely. Thank you for giving birth to me. Thank you for bringing me into this world, and thank you for everything you have done for me. Mother. The word mother, that he had waited for 19 years, softened the years and comforted the more than 7,000 days and nights of separation. Shang Guanyin choked and couldn't speak. Thank you, my son. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1069300020. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile version reading website. Chapter 729. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more fully. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. Gu Qingfeng waited outside the palace for a long time until his temper flared up. Wang Su, can you do it? I still have to pick up the child later. You're delaying me from my work. I'll count to 3. If you still don't come out, I'll go into the palace to find you. Wang Su came out. Wang Su had just brought people to search Tianxiang Pavilion yesterday. Gu Qingfeng had seen him before. The symbol of Commandant Guan on him was obvious. It was hard not to recognize him. After Wang Su left Gaomen, he sat on the carriage to return to his residence. Gu Qingfeng followed quietly. Wang Su was not in a hurry. The carriage did not go too fast. As they left the palace, there were more shops and pedestrians on the street. This caused Wang Su's carriage to slow down. Gu Qingfeng followed at a distance. When Wang Su's carriage passed by a restaurant, it was stopped by another carriage. A middle-aged man dressed as a steward came down from the carriage. He smiled and cupped his hands towards Wang Su's carriage. It was unknown what he said to Wang Su, but Wang Su got down from the carriage and entered the restaurant beside him. Gu Qingfeng did not go in directly. Instead, he went to the ready-made clothing store diagonally across the street to buy a set of female clothing. He could not bear to buy jewelry, so he only used a hairband. Wearing a veil, he looked like an ordinary girl. He entered the restaurant and said he was looking for someone. The waiter saw that she was dressed plainly and did not look like a rich family's daughter. He was too lazy to greet her and told her to look for someone herself. Gu Qingfeng quickly found the middle-aged man in a room at the east end of the corridor on the second floor. He was guarding the door. There were 2 men of sacrifice with him. Was there such a big lineup? What was going on? With the men of sacrifice guarding, it was impossible for Gu Qingfeng to eavesdrop in the corridor. He entered an empty room, pushed open the window, and jumped out onto the roof. He used Qinggong to come to the room where Wang Su was. He bent down, picked up a tile, opened it slightly, and looked down through the gap. An old man? He was dressed very luxuriously. He sat on an armchair, his hands resting on the handle of a rosewood cane. Gu Qingfeng happened to be on top of his head, so he couldn't see his face clearly. Wang Su, on the other hand, was sitting opposite him. Due to the angle, Gu Qingfeng could see a small part of Wang Su's face. What is Old Master Han doing? Wang Su said. Old Master Han? Han Ye's grandfather, the head of the Han family? Gu Qingfeng pricked up his ears. Old Master Han winked at the manservant beside him. The manservant walked towards Wang Su with a brocade box in his hands. Wang Su glanced at the brocade box and asked seriously, "What's the meaning of this?" Old Master Han raised his hand, and the servant opened the brocade box. Gu Qingfeng wanted to see what was inside the brocade box, but he was blocked by the servant's brain spoon. Gu Qingfeng gritted his teeth. However, he saw Wang Su's body tense up. He couldn't tell if he was excited or surprised. Could it be that this old thing wanted to bribe Wang Su? The Han family was imperial concubine Han's mother's family, and belonged to the crown prince's party. Speaking of this, Gu Qingfeng couldn't help but sigh at the complexity of the Yan royal family. In Zhao country, the princes were not allowed to form cliques for personal gain, but the Yan monarch didn't seem to care. The Yan monarch didn't seem to be angry when the top 10 aristocratic families openly supported their own princes. The only aristocratic family that the monarch had suppressed was the Xianyuan family. The whole family was destroyed. Old Master Han smiled and said, "I know you've been coveting my treasure for a long time. Today, I'll give it to you." Wang Su withdrew his gaze from the box and said seriously, "I don't deserve it. Old Master Han, you frighten me." Old Master Han laughed and said, "Don't be so nervous. It's just an antique. I can afford it. If you like it, I have many more in my house." Wang Su asked, "Old Master Han, what can I do for you?" Old Master Han said, "You're a smart man. I'll be frank. There's something I don't understand and I want to ask Commandant Wang to explain it to me." Wang Su said, "As long as it's not related to the imperial court, I'll tell you everything I know." The Wang family and the Han family were the top aristocratic families in Qingdu. In terms of background, the Wang family was more profound than the Han family. However, consort Wang Xian didn't give birth to a son and only had 2 princesses. Therefore, in the eyes of the people, the Han family with the crown prince was better. But in fact, according to Gu Qingfeng's investigation, the Wang family was more valued by the monarch. Old Master Han said faintly, I heard that the crown prince is back. Wang Su frowned and said, Oh, I haven't heard about it. You're well informed. Old Master Han smiled and said, You don't have to make insinuations. After all, I'm the crown prince's uncle. The crown prince just went to the state preceptor palace to visit the deposed crown princess. His Majesty was there, and so was the crown prince. The implication was that he didn't pay much attention to the deposed crown princess, but it was such a coincidence that the crown prince met the crown prince. The crown prince was Old Master Han's nephew. How could he not tell Old Master Han such an important thing? Wang Su took a deep look at Old Master Han and asked, Then what does this have to do with you coming to see me now? Old Master Han said, To tell you the truth, I suspect that this crown prince is a fake. Wang Su's expression changed and he asked, Why do you say that? Old Master Han said meaningfully, My family's people were transporting ores to Qi City. Yesterday, they sent a pigeon back saying that they met the crown prince. Qi City is at least 7 to 8 days away from here. I don't think the crown prince can grow a pair of wings and fly back. Wang Su frowned and asked, Your family's people know the crown prince? Old Master Han seemed to have expected him to ask this question. He smiled and said, You don't think that with our Han family's ability, we can't get a portrait of the crown prince, do you? There was a portrait, but the matter of the crown prince meeting the crown prince was a fabrication. But if he didn't say that, how could he arouse Wang Su's suspicion? No matter whether Wang Su believed him or not, he would still go to the state preceptor palace to check. Gu Qingfeng clenched his fists. This old thing was very cunning. Wang Su looked at Old Master Han with a serious expression and asked, So Old Master Han, you want me to expose the crown prince? Old Master Han nodded without hesitation and said, Exposing him is beneficial to our Han family. That's right. That's my purpose. I want to clear all obstacles for the crown prince. We're all smart people, so why pretend to be innocent and hypocritical? Wang Su said seriously, If he's a fake, then it's my duty to expose him. Old Master Han, you should take back your things. Wang Su didn't do this for the Han family, but for the emperor. Old Master Han sent him again and again, but Wang Su refused. In the end, Old Master Han sighed helplessly and Wang Su took his leave. Gu Qingfeng slowly put the tile back and planned to leave as well. At this moment, he heard a conversation in the room. Master, why didn't he take it? He didn't refuse us, did he? It was the middle-aged steward. He had been waiting in the corridor outside the door and didn't hear the conversation inside. Old Master Han smiled and stroked the antique in the brocade box. The crown prince is still too young. It's a bad idea to cater to his interests and ask for help. It's better to attack his weakness and turn him into the master. How can I let go of this treasure? Gu Qingfeng thought. Good Lord, he's trying to get something without risking anything. The middle-aged steward said worriedly, Will he tell the emperor about our attempt to bribe him? Old Master Han said sarcastically, If he sincerely accepts it, he probably won't tell the emperor. The crown prince took this into consideration and decided to bribe him. But I think it's okay if he tells the emperor. The deposed crown princess and the crown prince are a huge threat to the crown prince. If we don't do anything, it'll be suspicious. Sometimes, if we reveal a little flaw, the emperor will think that we're all under his control. We're not a big threat. The middle-aged steward said excitedly, Master, you're wise. Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. The crown prince must have inherited his craftiness from the Han family. Does the Han family all use this kind of tactic? It's really from the same origin. Gu Qingfeng didn't like this guy and really wanted to beat him up. But with his current strength, it would be a little difficult to deal with the 2 men of sacrifice outside the door. He would never admit that he had no power to fight back. I'll call that girl over some other day and put you in a sack. Gu Qingfeng chased after Wang Su. Wang Su originally wanted to go home, but after talking with Old Master Han, he decided to go to the Grand Preceptor Hall. Wang Su had stayed in the Imperial Mausoleum for a few years and taught the Crown Prince martial arts. Although the Crown Prince didn't learn a single move. But after all, they had been together for a long time, and there were things that only the 2 of them knew. He would know if the other party was really the crown prince after a test. After the carriage had traveled for a while, he frowned and said to the coachman, "Stop." Yes. The coachman stopped the carriage by the side of the road. Wang Su got out of the carriage and went to a pastry shop to buy the crown prince's favorite peach pastry. "Excuse me, do you have a washroom?" he asked the shop owner. "Yes, in the backyard," the shop owner said. "Then I'll put my peach pastry here first." Okay. Gu Qingfeng waited outside the shop for a long time, but Wang Su didn't come out. What's going on? Did he fall into the latrine? Gu Qingfeng decided to look for him. He searched the backyard inside and out, but there was no trace of Wang Su at all. Gu Qingfeng slapped his head. Oh no, he found out and ran away. Wait, I can't be anxious. Where would he go? I know. He must have gone to the Grand Preceptor Hall. He went to find the Crown Prince. Gu Qingfeng had been in contact with Xiaoheng day and night. He always listened to Xiaoheng's analysis of the aristocratic families and the current situation in Xingdu. Under the influence of what he saw and heard, his logical reasoning had improved. After that, his temper became a little more stable. He took a deep breath. I'm not anxious. Damn you, don't be anxious. He'll be finished if he sees Xiaoheng. Gu Qingfeng ran away immediately. Xiaoheng, hang in there. You must avoid Wang Su. If you can't avoid him, you can play dead. Wang Su was wearing the official uniform of Commandant Guan. If Xiaoheng saw him, he would be able to recognize him. However, Wang Su was not stupid. After he entered the Grand Preceptor Hall on the pretext of seeking an audience with the monarch, he dirtied his clothes when no one was looking and borrowed a set of clothes from the Grand Preceptor Hall's disciples. In an empty corner, Wang Su tied his hair into a high bun on the top of his head. At a glance, he was an elder disciple of the Grand Preceptor Hall. Is His Majesty and the Crown Prince in the Qilin Hall? He stopped a disciple passing by. His aura was so strong that the disciple thought he was an unknown senior brother. The disciple said respectfully, His Majesty and the young princess have gone to find the Grand Preceptor. The Crown Prince is in the Qilin Hall. Thank you. Wang Su thanked him and walked toward the Qilin Hall. It was already evening. The summer days were long and the sun was abundant. The sky was still bright. He came to the corridor of the Qilin Hall. The corridor was empty and looked like there was no one, but there were a few gazes in the dark. Wang Su understood that these gazes were from the death warriors of the Grand Preceptor Hall. He was not here to kill people. There was no murderous aura on him, so the death warriors would not attack him. He looked through the rooms one by one and finally saw a side room with the door half open at the end. He came to the door of the side room and could faintly see a young man sitting at a square table with his back facing the door. There were flour, bowls, meat stuffing, and other things on the table. The man seemed to be rolling the dough. His movements were slightly clumsy. It was obvious that it was his first time doing this. On the bed beside him lay the injured crown princess. On the other small bed, there was someone sleeping. Wang Su thought that this young man must be the crown prince that old Master Han had mentioned. There was a secret signal between him and the crown prince. He only needed one sentence to test whether the crown prince was real or fake. His actions had to be fast and his voice had to be loud. Only then could he catch the other party off guard. As the thought flashed through his mind, Wang Su suddenly pushed open the door and jumped into the room. He shouted with full energy, Heavenly King covers Earth Tiger. Bang! The young man picked up the rolling pin in his hand and knocked him out. After the rolling pin with internal energy hit Wang Su, it flew back into the man's hand. Gu Chongqing did not turn his head. With a face full of flour, he continued to seriously and clumsily roll the dough. Younger sister wants to sleep. Don't be noisy. Digression. Cooking for younger sister got. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that cannot be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896422826/106925183183 HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. Chapter 730. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found on the internet are all available here. After Gu Chengfeng realized that he had lost Wang Su, he rushed to the Grand Tutor Hall with all his might. He used his qinggong to the extreme. The wind blew and he almost couldn't open his eyes. However, he still couldn't catch up with Wang Su. There was no other reason. This was the inner city of Chengdu, Wang Su's territory. Gu Chengfeng usually stayed in the remote Tianxiang Pavilion in the outer city. Even if he entered the city, he only came to see Xiao Heng and little Jing Kong. He wasn't familiar with the inner city and couldn't beat Wang Su, who took a shortcut. In addition, in order to hide from others and eavesdrop on Wang Su, Gu Chengfeng changed into a woman's skirt. This dragged him down. He grabbed the hem of his dress with both hands, spread his feet apart, and ran forward with his legs splayed out in front of him. The pedestrians on the road all looked at him like he was an idiot. Their jaws almost dropped. Gu Chengfeng finally arrived at the Grand Tutor Hall. He couldn't enter the hall openly, so he could only climb over the wall. But after running all the way, he was already panting like a dog. I'll pant twice, damn. What's going on? I'm so tired. Gu Chengfeng was almost done panting. He went to the side wall of the Grand Tutor Hall and jumped up. He was still in the same place. He jumped up again. He was still in the same place. He was really exhausted. Gu Chengfeng had to use the most primitive method, climbing the wall. He climbed to the top of the wall and fell down from the high wall. This was really the most embarrassing mission he had ever been on. When Gu Chengfeng arrived at the courtyard outside the sickroom of the Qilin Hall with his messy hair and loose clothes without a care for his image, it was as if he had just been ruthlessly defiled by someone. He didn't know anything about this. He came to the window and was about to lift his skirt and flip over when he saw Gu Changqing in the room. Gu Changqing was sitting at a square table with half of his face facing the window. His handsome face was covered with flour. There was dough, flour, and other ingredients on the table. He was using a rolling pin to roll dough. Gu Chengfeng took a few glances before he recognized that this was his elder brother. He was stunned. What was going on? Why would his elder brother appear here? Although he knew that his elder brother had come to the Yan Kingdom, he did not come to Chengdu. Furthermore, why would his elder brother be sitting here quietly rolling noodles? And it was so ugly. The thickness of the noodles was uneven, and the length was different. It wasn't noodles but dough lumps, right? Compared to Big Brother's appearance, Big Brother's rolling of noodles surprised Gu Chengfeng even more. This was something that Big Brother would never do in 10 lifetimes. It was even more impossible than him reincarnating as a woman. The corner of Gu Chengfeng's mouth twitched. For a moment he wondered if he was dreaming. He pinched his thigh hard, and the pain almost made him fall to the ground. Yes, it was not a dream. This was really Big Brother. Big Brother came to find him, and Big Brother was rolling noodles for him. Gu Chengfeng was moved to tears. He looked affectionately at Big Brother, who was clumsily rolling noodles, and said excitedly, "Big! Bang!" The rolling pin flew over. Gu Chengfeng was hit in the face and fell to the ground with his arms and legs spread out. The rolling pin had already flown back. "I told you not to quarrel." Gu Changqing caught the rolling pin that flew back and continued to roll noodles. Gu Chengfeng looked at the blue sky and white clouds, and said in a voice that only he could hear, "Big Brother, I am your younger brother Xiao Hongfeng." Hongfeng. Xiao Heng had just been called by the monarch. He knew that Gu Changqing had come. It was because Gu Changqing was here that he felt relieved to go out. When he returned to the ward, he first found a disciple of the State Preceptor Hall, who had fainted at the door. When he closed the window, he found an unconscious civilian girl in the courtyard. It seems to be Gu Chengfeng. Xiao Heng recognized him. Gu Changqing paused in his action of rolling the dough. Xiao Heng was puzzled. Why did he faint? Gu Changqing, whose body suddenly stiffened, was speechless. Gu Chengfeng was pulled into the house by Gu Changqing. Gu Changqing pinched his philtrum. His younger sister was asleep. No one was allowed to disturb her. His younger brother was cruelly woken up. Gu Chengfeng slowly woke up on the chair. At this time, he did not know that there was a stick mark all over his face. The left and right sides of his face were clearly separated. He saw Big Brother, who was standing in front of him like a mountain, and suddenly felt a lump in his throat. He felt so wronged. Big Brother hit him as soon as they met. Gu Changqing looked at him condescendingly and said indifferently, "Have you been neglecting your martial arts practice these days? Why can't you take one hit?" Gu Chengfeng was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Big Brother's serious face. It was not that Big Brother did not recognize him, nor did he hit him. He was testing his martial arts. Big Brother had always remembered his martial arts. He misunderstood Big Brother. "Big Brother," Gu Changqing said sternly, "from now on, wake up an hour earlier every day to practice martial arts." "Yes, Big Brother." Gu Changqing turned around and heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Jiao woke up at dusk. She had a good sleep. She felt alive. She sat up and stretched. Then she realized three things. First, Gu Changqing was here. Second, there was a strong fragrance of noodles in the house. Third, Gu Jiao looked strangely at Gu Chengfeng, who was sitting beside Gu Changqing. How did you become a pig's head?" Gu Chengfeng pointed. "That's a pig's head. I'm not." Gu Jiao looked in the direction of Gu Chengfeng's finger. She saw an unconscious man who was tied up and sitting on the ground by the wall. From the extent of his bruises, this person was indeed better. This was because Wang Su shouted louder, so Gu Changqing hit him harder. "Who is he?" Gu Jiao asked. "Wang Su." Xiao Heng said. "Eat the noodles first. I'll tell you slowly," Gu Changqing said to Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao nodded. She got up and sat down beside Gu Changqing. Using noodles to let his sister sit beside him was very scheming. Gu Jiao looked at Gu Changqing beside her, and then looked at Xiao Heng and Gu Chengfeng. "You're all here. Where's Jing Kong?" At this time, school should be over in Jing Kong, Xiao Heng said. They brought her to the garden to play with the little princess. The original plan was for Gu Chengfeng to pick her up and send her to Willow Lane to stay for a few days. With Master Nan and Master Lu looking after her, nothing should happen. Who would have thought that Gu Chengfeng would be beaten into a pig's head with a stick? Xiao Heng had no choice but to change his plan and bring the young commandery princess to fetch her playmate. "Eat it while it's hot," Gu Changqing said. "Otherwise the noodles will be lumpy." Gu Jiao looked at the steaming hot noodles in the bowl. She didn't ask whether it was noodles or noodles. She just sighed and said, "I just woke up and there's food. It's good." Gu Chengfeng and Xiao Heng burped together. "Yes, you're really good. We and the other disciples of the State Preceptor Palace in the kitchen are all stuffed." In order to improve his cooking skills, Gu Changqing rolled wave after wave and cooked bowl after bowl. This bowl was just out of the pot. Fortunately, Gu Changqing's cooking skills were better than Xiao Liulong's. Except for the ugly appearance, the taste was not bad. Gu Jiao didn't eat at noon. After the operation, she fell asleep. She was really hungry now. Gu Jiao said, "The noodles are quite chewy." Gu Changqing. "I made Yangchun noodles. Gu Changqing had heard Gu Jiao mumble about Yangchun noodles in her sleep when he was guarding her. The chefs in the State Preceptor's Hall could not make authentic Zhao country Yangchun noodles, so he decided to cook for his sister personally. While Gu Jiao ate the noodles, Gu Jiao told Gu Chengfeng about old Master Han meeting Wang Su. Anyway, Wang Su is the only one who can recognize the eldest grandson of the emperor, except for the former crown princess. Gu Jiao slurped the noodles. "Oh, I see." As soon as her voice fell, Wang Su woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found that he was tied up. He looked at the people in the room with a dumbfounded face. He didn't understand what happened. Just now, there was only the eldest grandson of the emperor, but now, why are there people? His eyes looked back and forth between Xiao Heng and Gu Changqing. Finally, he realized that the man rolling the noodles was not the eldest grandson of the emperor, but the person in front of him. When did the eldest grandson of the emperor have such a broad back? Who are you? He asked warily. Gu Jiao came over with the noodles, squatted down in front of him, and said while slurping, "Are you that unlucky guy?" Wang Su. Xiaoheng looked at Gu Jiao's back as she squatted on the ground and sucked on the bowl. Why did he feel that this posture was a little familiar? He looked at the sleeping Shangguan Yan and the corner of his mouth twitched. Can't I learn something good? I'm asking you a question. Gu Jiao said. Rumble, Wang Su's stomach growled. Wang Su turned his face away and tried not to smell the aroma of the noodles. But will it be okay if he doesn't smell it? The sound of Gu Jiao slurping the noodles was simply enough to make people drool. Gu Jiao first put a hat on him. You disguised yourself as a disciple of the state preceptor palace. Did you want to assassinate the eldest grandson of the emperor? Wang Su turned his face and sternly refuted. You're talking nonsense. How can I assassinate His Highness? Gu Jiao said oh and casually asked. Then what are you doing here? Wang Su looked at the noodles in her bowl, swallowed his saliva and said, I got the news that someone pretended to be His Highness, so I came to identify the real one. Gu Jiao asked, Did you identify it? Wang Su awkwardly said, No, I haven't finished the code yet, but I was knocked unconscious by your people. Gu Jiao curiously asked, What code? Tell me about it. The three men in the room all looked at Wang Su, including Xiaoheng, who didn't change his expression. Wang Su was stationed at the Imperial Mausoleum when Shangguan Qing was 13 years old. He didn't have any contact with Shangguan Qing in the first half of the year. It was by chance that he was injured and returned to the camp. He met Shangguan Qing on the way, and Shangguan Qing asked someone to send him a bottle of wound medicine at night. At that time, he thought that this child was good and wanted to teach him martial arts. But this child was unwilling to study hard, and often led him astray. For example, in the past 2 years he didn't teach Shangguan Qing any moves, but Shangguan Qing taught him a lot of strange codes. Wang Su took a deep look at Xiaoheng and said seriously, The Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger. Gu Jiao said without hesitation, You're an idiot. Wang Su was stunned and looked at Gu Jiao in disbelief. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles, finished it and said, Did I get it right? Wang Su was surprised. This was impossible. This was clearly a secret signal between him and the eldest grandson of the emperor. Gu Jiao. I bet a pack of spicy sticks that the state preceptor knows all about it. Gu Jiao pointed at Xiaoheng. He taught me. After the code is correct, he is the imperial grandson. Wang Su frowned. Why don't I believe it? Each of you is more suspicious than the other. The thought flashed through his mind. Wang Su frowned and said, I still have the code. I don't believe that you can all answer it. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles. Go ahead. Wang Su. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Gu Jiao. East, west, north, south, center, and white. Wang Su was shocked. Every cause has its effect. Your retribution is mine. Wang Su's body trembled. He gritted his teeth again and made a ruthless plan. Medicine. Gu Jiao slurped a mouthful of noodles. Check. Wang Su was shocked for the third time. Gu Chengfeng patted Xiaoheng next to him and whispered, What are they talking about? Do you understand? Xiaoheng thought to himself, It would be strange if I understood. What kind of nonsense is this? Did Xiaoqing really teach them? Why does it sound like they aren't serious? Having an indecent father is already enough. Don't tell me he also has an indecent older brother? Wang Su threw out a few more secret signals one after another, and Gu Jiao matched them all without any mistakes. Wang Su took a deep breath, looked at Gu Jiao, and then looked at Xiaoheng not far away. He clenched his fists and said, Now that things have come to this, I can only use my trump card. If you can even answer this, then I will believe that he is the real imperial grandson. Gu Jiao calmly drank a mouthful of noodles and motioned for him to continue. Wang Su narrowed his eyes, raised his chin, and said with a strong aura, This time it's not a code, it's a title. It's tailor-made for me by His Highness Prince Chongsun. His Highness Prince Chongsun said that this is the dream of all men in the world, to become the person. Gu Jiao tilted her head. Old Wang from next door. Wang Su. How the hell do you even know this? The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/1069084886. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. Chapter 731. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all here. Wang-Su completely collapsed. He lay on the cool floor in a daze, staring straight at the roof beams as if he had been struck by lightning 100,000 times. Gu Jiao stood up with the bowl of noodles and pouted at Gu Qingfeng. She said lightly, "Untie him, he's one of us." Gu Qingfeng was dumbfounded. "That's it. No, there are so many people here, and you're ordering me around? You know I'm the most reliable." Gu Qingfeng strode over with a big rolling pin mark on his head, and untied the rope on Wang-Su's body. How could Wang-Su not recognize this was the common woman, who had followed him on the street? With an Adam's apple. It was a man. Wang-Su's heart was full of doubts. Who were the people who appeared beside the imperial grandson in this room? One was a terrifying master who could knock him down with a rolling pin. One was a master of Qinggong who was good at disguise and forced him to escape, and the other was Xiao Lulang, whom he knew. He was the doctor that the monarch had invited for the deposed crown princess. He was the one who had brought Xiao Lulang in through the palace gate. "No, why were you following me just now?" Wang-Su asked Gu Qingfeng. Since the girl said she was one of them, Gu Qingfeng didn't plan on disguising himself as a woman anymore. His eyes flashed, and he said in his own male voice, "I wasn't following you, I was following the crown prince. The crown prince met with the old man of the Han family again, so I followed him to see what tricks he was up to. Who knew you would come? You secretly met with the old man of the Han family, isn't that suspicious?" Sure enough, he was a man, Wang-Su thought. Wang-Su carefully considered the possibility of the situation Gu Qingfeng described. The conflict between the crown prince and the deposed crown princess wasn't new. The cause could be traced back to when the crown princess was deposed, and the crown prince became the heir apparent. Anyone would think that the crown prince stole what belonged to the crown princess. A few days ago, the crown prince and the deposed crown princess had an argument in the harem, and the crown prince's guards even injured the deposed crown princess. Now that the deposed crown princess was being persecuted again, it was reasonable that the imperial grandson would be the first to suspect the crown prince and send people to keep an eye on him. After Gu Qingfeng untied him, he stood up and extended a hand to him. Wang-Su grabbed Gu Qingfeng's hand and stood up. "Hiss, so painful. Who's that big guy?" He was too heavy-handed. He limped over to Xiao Heng and cupped his hands in salute. "Your humble servant Wang-Su greets your highness Zhongsun." Through Gu Qingfeng's observation of Wang-Su, although this person was a little unreasonable, he was not bought by grandfather Han. It could be seen that he was a loyal person. Xiao Heng nodded and said, "What happened today was a misunderstanding. Commandant Guan, please don't take it to heart. It was this humble subject who was impetuous. Your Highness Zhongsun is willing to overlook this humble subject's mistake. This humble subject is extremely grateful. His Majesty is in the stargazing tower. Go and report to him." "Yes." Wang-Su cupped his hands in salute again, and then retreated. The moment he turned around, he suddenly turned his head to look at Xiao Heng. "Your Highness Zhongsun won't ask this humble subject whether or not this humble subject has found any clues." Even Imperial concubine Han had sent people to inquire about it in front of him. Xiao Heng looked at him with a heavy gaze. "I believe that Commandant Guan will give my mother justice." His Highness Zhongsun still trusted him as always, A wave of heat rolled through Wang Su's heart. An impulse to be trusted struck him in the heart. He solemnly said, "This humble subject will do his best." He left the room. Gu Qingfeng stuck his head out to take a look. He entered the room and clapped his hands. Okay, he's gone far. Xiao Heng took out a clean piece of gauze from his bosom. After opening it, a small thread was revealed. This was something that had been found on Wang Su's body. Wang Su had wrapped it in a handkerchief. It was incompatible with Wang Su's identity as Commandant Guan. It also faintly exuded the fragrance of grass and the smell of blood. Xiao Heng speculated that it was the evidence that Wang Su had found at the crime scene today. Xiao Heng cut a small piece of it with a pair of scissors. The clothes that Sheng Guanyan wore when she was injured had been taken off by Gu Jiao and placed in a box in the ward as evidence. After careful examination, Xiao Heng found that this piece of silk did not come from Sheng Guanyan. The four people sat around the square table. Gu Jiao had finished her noodles and was holding a bowl that was bigger than her face to drink the noodle soup. Xiao Heng sat beside her and said, "It should be the murderer's clothes that were left in the grass or thorns at the scene." Gu Qingfeng and Gu Changqing sat opposite the two people. "Is it that Han Ye's cloth?" Gu Qingfeng asked. Han Ye was very suspicious. Not only did he assassinate Xiao Heng, but he also tried to assassinate Gu Jiao. He seemed to be the best knife in the crown prince's hand. Xiao Heng shook his head. "This is coarse silk. It's a fur coat in winter and coarse clothes in summer. Coarse silk doesn't have a strong insulation, but it has excellent ventilation, so it is generally used to make summer clothes," he said and looked at Gu Qingfeng. "Your coat is made of coarse silk. The quality is not as good as the coarse silk in my hand, but this kind of coarse silk is not the best. Today in the forest, when Jiao Jiao fought with Han Yi, he wore silk. That night, when he disguised himself as a black-clothed man to assassinate me at the academy, he wore the best coarse silk. In fact, it was not difficult to understand. Han Yi was the heir of the Han family. He was a real aristocrat. Naturally, it was impossible for him to wear 7 or 8 sets of cheap night clothes on the market. They were all custom-made. They were close-fitting, light, and had good stretch. Gu Qingfeng looked at the coarse silk in Xiao Heng's hand and said thoughtfully, "That is to say, this material is neither the cheapest nor the most expensive." Xiao Heng said, "It's above average. The common people can't afford it, and the aristocrats don't like it." Gu Qingfeng frowned. Who could it be? A master of the Han family? A master of the crown prince's mansion? Could it be that Qi Xian? They had already exchanged all the information they knew. Xiao Heng's background, the fact that Sheng Guanyan was the female slave of the Yan kingdom, and the clues about Qi Xian and other people related to Han Yi. Gu Qingfeng asked Gu Changqing, "Big brother, you fought with Qi Xian. Did you see what clothes he was wearing?" Gu Changqing said, "I didn't fight with him." Qi Xian grabbed Han Yi and left. He didn't fight with Gu Changqing. Gu Jiao raised a hand from behind the big bowl. "I fought with Qi Xian." Gu Qingfeng looked at her. "Did he wear clothes made of this material?" Gu Jiao, "I don't remember." Gu Qingfeng. Xiao Heng said, "Keep an eye on Wang Su. See if he has any clues." Gu Qingfeng's mouth twitched. "Haha, what happened to the trust? Isn't he still secretly watching?" "Got it. I'll keep an eye on him later." Gu Qingfeng curled his lips. Thinking of something, he asked, "I still don't understand. They killed you because you are the eldest grandson of the emperor. You haven't been demoted to a commoner. But your mother is no longer a member of the imperial family. Why are there still people who don't let her go?" Xiao Heng said, "If they can be demoted, they can be reinstated. The emperor once said that the crown princess, Sheng Guanyan, was demoted to a commoner and imprisoned in the imperial mausoleum, never to return to the capital. But now, not only had she returned, she had even moved into the imperial palace. Who among those who were itching to make a move could sit still? The crown prince is the first one who can't sit still. 1 or 2 days may be nothing, but after a long time, some people will worry about whether the emperor's father-daughter relationship with Sheng Guanyan has returned. This is a very dangerous signal. Not everything must be solved after it happens. It is better to nip the problem in the bud and nip the problem in the bud." Even if it is just a speculation, it must be stifled immediately. Gu Qingfeng thought for a moment and said to Xiao Heng, "You don't have to go through so much trouble. Maybe your mother saw the murderer." "We can't rule out this possibility," Xiao Heng said. "If she really saw it, we will know if another person came out to take the blame." The person who tried to assassinate him that night was obviously Han Yi. But the one who was punished was the second master of the Han family. Gu Jiao drank the last mouthful of noodle soup. She had just put down the big empty bowl when two slender hands reached out to her at the same time. One was Gu Chongqing's and the other was Xiao Heng's. Both of them were holding a clean handkerchief in their hands. Gu Jiao blinked her eyes. Why does she feel like this is another question that will send her to her death? She slightly raised her left hand. Gu Chongqing's face sank. She slightly raised her right hand. Xiao Heng's face turned black. Her eyes moved. She stretched out her hands and grabbed the handkerchief of the two men at the same time. No distinction between first and second, fair treatment. While wiping her mouth with two handkerchiefs, she ran out of the room. When she was gone, her voice came from the corridor. "I'm going to find the state preceptor." The two men stared at each other for 3 seconds. Suddenly, they got up and shouted at the door, "Your foot." This girl sprained her ankle and still ran away. Gu Jiao's foot was fine. Her body had been trained by her, so her recovery ability was excellent. She went to the library. There were 3 floors in the library. The first floor was the largest, where the most common books were placed. The second floor was the second largest, which contained some more professional and hard-to-find books. The third floor was the smallest, which involved the secrets of the Yan Kingdom and the State Preceptor's Palace. For example, the former 6 books of the Yan Kingdom were once displayed on the third floor. Gu Jiao only went to the first floor. Yi Qing was sorting out books in front of a row of bookshelves. When he saw Gu Jiao come in, he politely greeted, "Young Master Xiao." Gu Jiao nodded. "Yi Qing." Yi Qing handed the books in his hand to the disciple beside him. "You take these 2 books out to dry. They are a little wet. I will come back later to sort out the rest." "Yes, senior brother." The disciple took the books with both hands, bowed and walked out. Yi Qing took Gu Jiao to the tea table, walked up a high step, and sat down on the opposite side of the desk. Gu Jiao sat down opposite him in the same posture. He picked up a pot of tea from the small wooden bucket filled with ice, smiled slightly and said, "It's honey flower tea." He first poured a cup for Gu Jiao, and then poured a cup for himself. Gu Jiao had just eaten a big bowl of noodles. To be honest, her stomach was a little full, so she just took a sip. There should be mint in the tea, which was very fragrant and pleasant. Yi Qing said with a smile, "Young Master Xiao, are you here to see my master? Master and His Majesty are on the 3rd floor, and Commandant Wang has just gone up. I guess they won't finish talking for a while. If young Master Xiao has something urgent, I can pass on a message for young Master Xiao." The disciple of the State Preceptor's Palace who was serving tea for the 2 heard Yi Qing's words, and a trace of surprise flashed through his eyes. When the State Preceptor was talking with others, he never allowed anyone to disturb him, let alone pass on a message if there was no urgent matter. What was so special about this young Master Xiao? Gu Jiao didn't know that the State Preceptor was so arrogant. She thought that reporting to the State Preceptor was a routine operation, but she didn't have to see the State Preceptor. Gu Jiao took a sip of tea and asked, "Did your master teach you those secret words?" Yi Qing looked blank. "What secret words?" Gu Jiao. "Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple." Yi Qing blurted out reflexively, "East, west, north, south, and white." Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes. "Sure enough, it's you." Shang Guanqing came to the State Preceptor's Palace every 2 years, and stayed for a few days every time. It was said that he had a good relationship with the disciples of the State Preceptor's Palace. It was obvious that these secret words were taught by the State Preceptor. Yi Qing smiled embarrassedly. It was the imperial grandson who told young Master Xiao. It's just a few jokes. Young Master Xiao doesn't have to take it to heart. Gu Jiao snorted. "Old man, you are not serious." Yi Qing laughed dryly. Speaking of which, it was not his master who was not serious. It was the imperial grandson who was not serious. Who knew that his stomach was full of evil ideas at such a young age? He could fall asleep while studying, but he had a better memory than anyone else when it came to learning these unorthodox things. Can I go up to your second floor to have a look? Gu Jiao asked. Yi Qing said. Young Master Xiao, you can. Others were not very good, they had to get the state preceptor's permission. But his master seemed to take special care of this young Master Xiao. Except for a few very special places, he could almost let young Master Xiao walk around. Gu Jiao and Yi Qing went up to the second floor. There were only 2 disciples on duty on the second floor. When the 2 saw Yi Qing, they respectfully saluted. Big brother. Yi Qing nodded and said to the 2. You do your thing, I will show young Master Xiao around. Yes. The 2 stepped aside. Yi Qing said to Gu Jiao. Young Master Xiao, please. Gu Jiao casually looked around. There were books on farming, law, arithmetic, astronomy, geography, and other relatively professional books. They were more in-depth and comprehensive than similar books on the market. Gu Jiao put the farming book back on the shelf and looked at the row of bookshelves on the right and said, What is that over there? There were not books on that row of bookshelves, but scrolls. Yi Qing looked and said, Those are portraits of all the major families. Oh, this was a good opportunity to collect information. Can I take a look? Gu Jiao politely asked. Of course. Yi Qing smiled and said. It was one thing for him to treat Gu Jiao with respect, but it was another thing for Gu Jiao to reciprocate with respect. This was much more comfortable to get along with than those nobles who had a smile on their face, but their words and actions were full of disdain. Gu Jiao came to the front of the bookshelves. There were originally wooden signs of the major families on the bookshelves. Today's weather was good, so the disciples who were sweeping took the wooden signs away to clean. Gu Jiao casually picked up a scroll. Yi Qing opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but after hesitating, he felt that it was okay. Gu Jiao opened the scroll. The portrait was of a man holding a red tasseled spear and wearing golden armor. His facial features were resolute, his eyebrows were cold, and there was a teardrop mole under his right eye. Looking at the face in the portrait, Gu Jiao froze for a moment. Her eyes moved down. Xianyuan. Her finger just happened to press on the last word of the name. She slowly moved her finger away. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found on the internet are all here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_89642826106904284. HTML Genius remembered this site's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. Chapter 732. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that can't be found online are here. Li. This is Xianyuan Li. Xianyuan Li and the king are of the same generation. If he is still alive, he should be about the same age as the king. This should be a portrait of him when he was young. Why do I have a feeling of déjà vu, as if I have seen it before? Is it the mole? Xiao Heng also has it. Or is it the red tasseled spear in his hand? This is Xianyuan Li, the former head of the Xianyuan family. Yi Qing saw that she was in a daze and introduced him to her. The Xianyuan family is a taboo in the Yan kingdom. Yi Qing is the eldest disciple of the state preceptor hall, so he has the confidence to mention it. Gu Jiao looked at it for a while, carefully put the portrait back, and opened another one. This time she looked at the name first, Xianyuan Cheng. It is also a portrait of a young man, who looks to be in his early 20s. He is wearing silver armor, holding a red tasseled spear, looks like Xianyuan Li, very heroic, and has a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. If he were to take off his armor, he would be an elegant young master with a jade-like appearance. Yi Qing looked at the portrait and said, Xianyuan Cheng was weak and sickly when he was a child. Coupled with the cinnabar mole between his eyebrows, he was always laughed at by young masters of the same age as a little girl. Then he followed his father to practice martial arts desperately, worked hard to become stronger, and finally became a famous general who can continue the legend of Xianyuan Li. Gu Jiao sighed. There is such an anecdote. The man in the portrait is tall, with fierce eyes and a murderous aura. Who would have guessed that he had such an experience when he was a child? Gu Jiao opened the third portrait of the Xianyuan Empress before she got married, and the name below is Xianyuan Hanyan. It is a portrait of her riding on a horse, quite a bit of the style of a tiger girl. Her appearance is extremely beautiful. Shang Guanyan is very similar to her, especially that pair of auspicious phoenix eyes. So it seems that Xiao Heng is also very similar to her. Gu Jiao opened the fourth portrait of a daughter of the Xianyuan family, whose name is Xianyuan Zi. Who is she? Gu Jiao asked Yi Qing. Yi Qing said pleasantly, Xianyuan Zi, the eldest daughter of the Li family, Xianyuan Cheng's younger sister, and later prince consort Jing. Gu Jiao was puzzled. Your Highness? Yi Qing thought for a moment and said, Yes, Duchessan. When she passed away, Crown Prince Jing had yet to inherit the house of Duke, so she was buried as the crown princess. Gu Jiao said subconsciously, Jingyi means mother? Now it was Yi Qing's turn to be puzzled. Huh. Young Master Xiao, you know about it? Gu Jiao replied. Oh, it suddenly popped up in my mind. Yi Qing expressed his understanding. You have been in the capital for so long, you must have heard about the Duke Ongwa's mansion. Yes, I've heard of her. Gu Jiao continued to study the woman in the portrait. This was an otherworldly face. When the facial features were taken apart, each one of them wasn't too exquisite, but when pieced together, they were beautiful. It was the kind of face that Gu Jiao liked. Gu Jiao stared at Xianyuan Zi's portrait for a long time, long enough for the last ray of light to dim. At this moment, there was a sound of knocking on the stairs from the third floor. It was a disciple who knocked over the scroll in his hand, and it rolled all over the floor. Yi Qing hurriedly went to help him pick it up. The two disciples on duty on the second floor didn't move. In the library, not only were the books and materials divided into ranks, but so were the disciples. The disciples on the first floor couldn't go up to the second floor, and couldn't peek at the things on the second floor. The disciples on the second floor couldn't go up to the third floor or touch anything related to the third floor. Therefore, only Yi Qing could help. Gu Jiao saw that the two disciples didn't move, and probably understood that it wasn't suitable for her to go, so she stayed where she was. It was just that the disciple was in a hurry, and the portrait that he picked up with great difficulty fell down again. He was in a hurry to grab the portrait, and almost fell down. Yi Qing was also in a difficult situation because of him. A scroll rolled to Gu Jiao's feet. Gu Jiao bent down and picked up the scroll, but didn't open it. She walked over and handed it to them. Here. Yi Qing took it. Thank you. There were several scrolls scattered on the ground. Gu Jiao didn't look at them, and turned around to leave. However, she caught a glimpse of a portrait out of the corner of her eye. Her first reaction was to continue to leave, but her second reaction was to suddenly stop. This time, she openly looked at the portrait. The disciple quickly rolled up the portrait, and put it away. He apologized again and again. I'm sorry, senior brother. Yi Qing said with tolerance. It's okay, be careful next time. He gratefully said. Yes then, senior brother, I'm leaving. Yi Qing nodded. Go. The disciple went down to the second floor with a pile of books and portraits. The youth in the portrait lingered in Gu Jiao's mind. Not for anything else, but because the youth's face looked too much like Long Yi's. If Long Yi returned to the age of 13 or 14, he might look like that. Ordinary people couldn't completely outline a person's appearance in their mind. Even the closest parents, as long as they closed their eyes, only a vague outline was left. But Gu Jiao was a person who had received special training. She could conjure all the faces she remembered. She kept comparing Long Yi with the youth in the portrait in her mind. Could that youth be Long Yi from many years ago? Or just a person who looked similar to Long Yi? If it was the latter, it was fine, but if it was Long Yi, from the distribution of the first and second floors. The higher you go, the more confidential it is. The portrait just now was taken down from the third floor. Even the portraits of the Xianyuan family and the 10 great families were only on the second floor. Could it be that Long Yi's level of confidentiality was higher than theirs? In the study on the third floor, the king and the state preceptor sat on the cushion and played chess. Wang Su waited for more than half an hour beside the two of them. Until the state preceptor's last chess piece fell, the king sighed. "You won again." The state preceptor said, "I won half a point." The king snorted. "Half a point is still a win. Don't think that I can't see that you have been giving way." The state preceptor looked at the king and said, "Your Majesty's chess skills were not so bad in the past. Your Majesty is absent-minded. Are you worried about Crown Princess?" "I am not worried about her," the king said and paused. "Also, she is not Crown Princess." The state preceptor didn't expose it. "It was obviously you who called her Crown Princess first last night." The king hesitated and asked, "Her injury, can it really be healed?" "Yes," the state preceptor said without hesitation. The king looked at him suspiciously. "You are too sure." The state preceptor said, "Because she performed the operation, so I am very confident." The king frowned even more. "State preceptor, I have known you for more than 30 years, but you have never praised anyone in front of me. Is this Xiao Luleng really so outstanding?" The state preceptor said, "Yes." The king was not used to the state preceptor praising a person like this. He didn't even praise Xianyuan Li like this. "But I don't like him very much," the king said. The state preceptor poured a cup of tea for the king. "Because there is no respect for the imperial power in his eyes? Just like the Xianyuan family." The king's face darkened when he mentioned the Xianyuan family. The state preceptor said lightly, "Your Majesty, you don't have to worry. He is just a student from Zhao country. Besides being proficient in medical skills, knowing how to play the bow, and having some skills, he is nothing." The king frowned. "You can admit that to this extent, and you still call it nothing?" The state preceptor seemed to be in a good mood. He laughed and said, "Since ancient times, heroes come from the young." The king didn't continue this topic. The state preceptor raised his hand. A disciple who was waiting respectfully by his side came forward, intending to rearrange the chessboard. The king waved his hand. "Forget it, don't play anymore. It is getting late. I should go back to the palace." "Your Majesty." The state preceptor looked at Wang Su. Only then did the king remember that Wang Su had just come over. It was just that he was too engrossed in playing chess, so he let Wang Su wait until now. "What's the matter?" Before the king finished his words, his voice got stuck in his throat. He frowned. "How did you become like this?" Wang Su had changed back to his official uniform of Commandant Guan, but he couldn't change his pig-head face for a while. He didn't mean to smear the emperor's grandson. He just said embarrassedly, "I fell down." The state preceptor took a sip of tea and joked. "People who practice martial arts have great strength. The strength of your fall is also beyond ordinary people's reach. Ordinary people can't fall and become a pig-head." Wang Su was embarrassed. Falling down sounded better than being beaten up. Wang Su went back to the topic. He cupped his hands and reported, "I investigated the case of the crown princess injury and found some clues." "Oh." The king just picked up the teacup and was about to drink. Hearing this, he put down the cup and said, "Speak." Wang Su took out a clean handkerchief from his bosom and opened it to reveal a thin strand of coarse silk. "I found this in the brambles at the crime scene. It should be from the murderer's clothes." Zhang Dequan took the handkerchief and handed it to the king and the state preceptor. The state preceptor glanced at it and said, "It's coarse cloth, produced in Huaiyang County. It's of medium quality. Our state preceptor hall also uses this kind of cloth to make summer clothes for our disciples." The material that the disciples of the state preceptor hall could afford to wear was not ordinary material. The king continued to look at the state preceptor. The state preceptor picked it up and sniffed. "It doesn't have the fragrance of our state preceptor hall. It's not from the state preceptor hall." The king. "Who suspects the state preceptor hall?" The state preceptor looked at Zhang Dequan. Who in the palace wears this kind of coarse silk? This. Zhang Dequan couldn't deduce this with just a strand of coarse silk. The state preceptor said to the disciple beside him, "Go and get an identical piece of coarse cloth." Yes. The disciple turned and left. Not long after, he came back with a long piece of coarse cloth. Zhang Dequan walked forward and touched it. He said in surprise, "This is the material that I'm wearing." The state preceptor said, "It seems that it's a eunuch from the palace, and a eunuch with a rank like eunuch Zhang." Wang Su added, "The other party didn't leave any footprints at the scene. I guess that the other party's lightness skill is very high." There weren't many eunuchs who had lightness skill and a rank, but they couldn't rule out the possibility that the other party had been hiding their skills. The king said in a low voice, "I'll give you 1 night. If I don't see the culprit by tomorrow morning, you'll be finished as Commandant Guan." Only 1 night? This was 2. But the king was a man of his word. If he couldn't find out the culprit, he could only be stripped of his official position by tomorrow. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, sir." It was getting late, and the king should go back. "Where's the young princess?" he asked Zhang Dequan. Zhang Dequan said, "She seems to be playing with her little classmate in the garden. Xiao Zheng is following her." Xiao Zheng was an expert in the imperial palace. This was the state preceptor's hall, so the king was not worried about the young princess's safety. He was just worried that he had neglected her for so long that she would feel wronged and sad. When she was sad, she would cry. When she cried, it would be earth-shattering. "Where's the snack?" the king asked. "It's here." Zhang Dequan carried the food box that he had prepared early in the morning. The king took Zhang Dequan and the snack to the garden to find the young princess. Coincidentally, Gu Jiao was also looking for little Jing Kong. She also heard that the 2 children were playing in the garden in the afternoon. After coming out of the library pavilion, she directly came here. Who would have thought that she didn't find little Jing Kong, but met the king instead? When the king saw Gu Jiao, his mind involuntarily flashed with Gu Jiao's words. "If I'm cured, won't you bring your head to thank me?" The king's heart was burning with anger. Shang Guanyin was injured and settled down. He thought that no one would come to anger him. But now he didn't know where this Xiao Lulang came from. The state preceptor was right. This kid's eyes didn't have any respect for the imperial power, so naturally he didn't fear the king. He stood there with an indomitable spirit. In a trance, the king seemed to see the figure of Xianyuan Cheng. Why wasn't it Xianyuan Li? It was probably because when the king knew Xianyuan Li was no longer a teenager. He only saw the appearance of the young Xianyuan Cheng in bright clothes. "Why don't you kneel when you see me?" "Why should I kneel? I'm the king." "You're not my king. I'm from the Zhao kingdom." The king had lived for more than half of his life, but he had never seen such an arrogant person. The king's eyes became dangerous. At this moment, a little eunuch hurriedly came and whispered a few words to Zhang Dequan. Zhang Dequan was relieved and said to the king, "Your Majesty, the young princess is in the Qilin Hall. Let's go find her quickly. Otherwise, if she can't see you, she will cry again. Once the sky turns dark, she will look for you. Have you forgotten?" The king thought of the crying Shangguan Shui and decided to let this kid go for the time being. He walked towards the Qilin Hall with a sullen face. Gu Jiao also wanted to go back to the Qilin Hall. If the young princess was there, little Jing Kong must be there too. The king only thought that she was going to take care of the crown princess. He frowned and didn't say anything. At this moment, the sky was completely dark. Usually at this time, if the young princess didn't see him, she would cry until the entire harem was restless. Thinking of this, the king quickened his pace. 100 ways to comfort the young princess flashed in his mind. In the end, when he reached the entrance of the Qilin Hall, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The young princess and little Jing Kong stood on the left and right of the entrance. Their small bodies were straight, and their small arms were behind their backs, like 2 little mascots. 2 small heads swayed at the same time and sang cutely. "You love me, ah? I love you, sweet honey. You love me, ah? I love you, sweet honey." After singing for half an hour, the entire country learned it. The king, Gu Jiao, Digression. Jiao Jiao. Cough, I only taught a few old songs from 100 years ago. Karaoke song list. Honey Snow Ice City theme song. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642826/10688296/10688294. HTML Genius remembered the website address in a second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. That you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.